That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they simple pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in the field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick. With a forceful grip, they force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature to mean extorted it. They forging it, if news anchors informants who informing them. There's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this, we courting ships important. Yes, of course it is, but extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks we ignoring, which informing this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers actors say they high, say they simple pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? What up, familiar in a world? So yeah, we're gonna have a little guest on. We're gonna have a cordial, respectful conversation. Is the plan. He goes by Brian's Logic on another show. And yeah, it's gonna be cool. We're gonna talk about the ether. I know some of you may have been played out on it. I told you guys we're gonna kind of move on from talking about it constantly, but I think this will be productive for everyone involved. So it should be cool. I have dropped a link in the chat if you want to become a member. It's greatly appreciated. All the chats will be read off per usual. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest, Brian's Logic.
Hey, what's it? Hey, everyone. How are things?
Pretty good, man. Cannot complain.
Yeah, my camera is a bit dark. It's a bit dark in the room, but if I turn on the light behind me, it will only make it all look worse because it's too bright. So this is as good as it's going to get.
You're cool, man. No worries.
I can stay off camera if you want. I don't mind. I just said I come on because you're on camera, so just for the audience.
It's up to you, bro. It's up to you. Whatever you're comfortable with. And if you want to, any point in time, you need to share the screen or whatever, you can press the share button down there, and I'll throw it on there. So I think the best way to start it off is to kind of let you lay out maybe your critique, because we can go from there. Pretty much everyone that's been on my channel for the last few days has heard it. I did a presentation on my take on the ether. What's up? Can't wait for some real talk. For the $20 super chat, Hellboy, much love. So yeah, I think that might maybe be the best way. Like, let you kind of give your take or your critique, and then we'll go from there.
Well, mostly I have questions, right? Mostly. That's my let's say tactic here tonight, is asking questions, because I haven't done a whole lot of research on light or the double slit or quantum eraser, any of these demonstrations. I haven't done a whole lot of research on them. It's the one topic within flat Earth, and just basic. Well, I don't know if you could even term light as well. It's physics, but I haven't really researched much on. But what I would like to know is, are you looking to know the cause of magnetism and electricity, or are you looking to prove the existence of the ether? That's something I would like to know.
Yeah, so the way that I currently see it is you can't really disconnect the two. So my primary motivation that got me interested in the conversation was magnetism, specifically electrostatics, magnetism, and electricity. And when I went to look into the mainstream science, it's just a bunch of I don't knows. And so magnetism is a very important thing, right? So electricity is very important. It's like the prominent force of the world. So uh, yeah, they're interconnected, right? Like if you apply the ether framework, magnetism is explained a certain way, and if you apply the atomistic framework, magnetism is explained a separate way. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. There does seem to be, if you apply ether as your framework of choice, then yeah, magnetism intrinsically has a relationship with that. So yeah, I mean, what's going on with magnetism is one of the primary questions.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand the curiosity with magnetism and electricity because they are a wonder. There's something that we don't really know the origin of outside of saying God, let's just say, right? But
Mhm.
the thing about it is that would you be open to, um, let's just say, finding the cause of magnetism is not ether?
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
it's like that's why I'm asking. It's like because I think that maybe there's too much emphasis being put on ether as being the background cause for magnetism and electricity, or being so connected to them when we haven't established anything concerning their causes. If you understand what I mean.
Right. Well, I think this is a big part of the conversation that gets overlooked. I try to lay it out in my presentation, which is like, but before we go into trying to understand magnetism and electricity, we kind of have to make a philosophical decision. I mean, I guess you could say, unfortunately, I mean, your name is Brian's Logic, right? You understand the importance in logic. So we have to make some type of decision as to a framework of interpretation before we go into it, right? Because we were taught everything is made up of little particles. And so if we're trying to understand everything from that paradigm, it's going to be drastically different than if we look at it from more of an etheric paradigm. So that's why it's kind of hard to disconnect the two. Um, yeah, that would be my answer. Like they claim that magnetism is the exchange of virtual photons is because the concept of electrons and photons don't work. There's too much energy there. So that concept doesn't work. They had to make up a new fairy tale called virtual photons. So for me, the way I present this is like I say, it's my opinion. I'm just very convicted in my opinion. So it comes across to some people like I'm stating as a matter of fact. But I'm just very convicted with what I think is true, meaning I say I think this is the only logically viable framework. Like I don't see another one. So that comes off very definitive, but I'm open to alternatives. I just haven't heard it, and I don't knows and nuh-uhs aren't particularly satisfactory, so that's where I'm at.
Well, see, like everyone else, I'm interested in what is the origins of magnetism and electricity, but why I can't get on board with it being ether is because ether is basically within a dimension outside of our 3D experience. That's how it's described. Or traditionally, that's how it's described, and I haven't heard anyone describe it differently, other than being something that's outside our 3D experience. So at that stage, if I was like, let's just say logically, to then state that the background for magnetism and electricity is ether, at that stage I might as well just say God, because God is outside my 3D reality too, and God then would be the cause of all these things. Now I
Sure.
know you could say God is the cause of everything. You could say that, right? If you were a believer in God, I obviously believe in God, but I'm not saying everyone does, but I'm saying you could say God is the cause of everything. But if you're talking about a cause and effect within our 3D world, we normally look for uh, the effect, which is the naturally observed phenomenon, and then we look for the natural cause that we can prove in 3D reality. Whereas
Mhm.
if it comes to the ether, how do we prove that in 3D reality? That's the main question from our side. I'm going to say our side because you know that I would be of the same opinion as Nathan and them. So from our side, how do we prove that in 3D reality to the point where we can actually make the claim that this is causing that, if you understand what I mean?
Yeah, it requires a intellectual preface that this is outside of the realm of scientifically proving something within the 3D reality. Either way, whether it be you take atomism and that everything's made of particles and you believe in atoms and photons and electrons, or that you don't. Either way, it's philosophy. Like that was the point of my presentation. So we have a decision. We can ignore the phenomena because we can't scientifically prove it, and I can understand why some people might want to do that, right? But there's a narrative floating around as if I this to FED's door and tried to make them agree with it or something, and that's not what happened. Actually, I was just on the show to kill time. Oakley asked me my opinion of the ether. I told him, well, my opinion is blah, blah, blah. And I don't think you can scientifically prove it in the material world. It's a logical framework, and I consider it to be the only one that's logical. I think a good thing that would maybe bridge the gap here, you mentioned God, right? So a lot of people will say God is that requires religious belief. I would disagree with that. I would say that you can prove there's a creator via logic. So would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would be of the mind that the first law of thermodynamics proves, and basically where we live, what we live in, proves the creator. The first law of thermodynamics states that neither matter nor energy can be created or destroyed, but that's by nature. So by nature, there is no foreseeable way for matter or energy to ever be created or destroyed. So that means something outside of nature, which means also outside of, let's just say, the heliocentric Big Bang theory, has to have created what we experience. And even though the Big Bang theory comes from the Vatican anyway,
Yeah, and it says there was a
yeah.
yes,
So that
says there was
shows
a
how
proof.
false it is, yeah. But
Yeah.
so I would say, yeah, absolutely, that, well, for me, it's not logical for there to not be a creator. But can I go to the man on the street and prove to that person that the creator exists? I can only offer things like the first law of thermodynamics and the world we live in, and how physics, what we know about the physical of it. And other than that, I can't actually prove it to that person.
Well, this is right. So this is why we need to maybe define prove, right? Because I look at that as demonstrating to be true beyond all reasonable doubt. I don't limit the word proof to science. I can logically prove things. So, the necessary antecedent to creation is a creator. So, what we see on the earth is design. We see order. We see order, and something had to place the order in order. Like it had to be placed there. So, the necessary antecedent to design, creation, order is intelligent design. Now, that's just a creation creator antecedent via logical necessity. Like it's a logical axiom. You can't have order out of chaos. That makes no sense. So now when you go on to call God a certain name or personify God and say, well, God is this or this or this is what I believe he's like, this is about what I believe he did to make the earth. These are religious claims, but you can logically establish that there is a creator. And I would say logically prove it, meaning you can prove things with logic if you can present a true dichotomy, right? Like if you can present a true dichotomy where there are no other options and only one of them is viable, then you prove something with logic. That's how I look at the creator. I can tell people definitively there is intelligent design behind this place because there is no other logically viable alternative. That means I've proven something with logic. I did not have to manipulate the creator to do that. I think that's the big disconnect here is I don't have now there are things now the material world itself, the 3D reality we experience came from the creator, right? In that scenario. So like we're talking about the 3D world, we're looking at the design, the order of it, and we're saying, okay, using this material evidence, this is what proves a creator. It's very similar to the rest of these discussions. So that's kind of how I look at it. I think that's a big disconnect. And that's why I don't want to call anyone materialist if they're not. I happen to know that you guys are not materialists. You can't really be a flat earther and be an atheist. It doesn't actually make any sense, right? Like, because if the earth is stationary, it had to be placed there. So I know you're not literally materialist. It's just that the talking point stems from materialism historically. And that's my problem. Like, I disagree with it vehemently. So I
You,
guess,
you
does that make
disagree
sense to you?
with the atomic model,
Say
basically.
again?
The molecular model, the molecular model, you disagree with that, the atomic model.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
disagree with the atomic model. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not, I don't have a whole lot of information on it, right?
Mhm.
On the atomic model, but I did hear about how they did shoot, was it the nuclei of helium into gold foil, and that nuclei, sometimes it bounced off the gold foil in an angle, sometimes it went through, and sometimes it came back at 180 degrees. So they surmise from this is that it's hitting something sometimes and not hitting something other times. That
Mhm.
was what their summation. Now, I don't know all the details of that demonstration of what they did, but that was the beginning, as far as I know, or part of it, where they started looking at things at the micro level or the macro level or whatever. When it comes to materialists, like we're all material. So, yeah, but when you were talking about material, being a materialist, you're talking about like a Big Bang believer would be a materialist. You're talking about in that way. Is that what you mean?
Well, okay, so to address the nuance, yeah, technically we're all materialists, meaning that we all live within the material world and we all interact with the material world and we acknowledge that it exists. In that sense, we are materialists. I mean it in the sense of like a holistic materialism, meaning nothing exists outside of the material world. Meaning if it's not materially manifest, it does not exist. And everything that does exist stems from the material world. And that's the definition of materialism. It can be nuanced, but that's what I'm saying. And when you say, "Well, we can't prove anything outside of the material world," I vehemently disagree on an intellectual level, like I just laid out with the creator, right? And if you remember what stemmed this whole thing before we get into the atomic model, which is a big part of it, I was using the analogy of the container, right? And so now that kind of got strawmanned, but the reason I brought that up was now it's not exactly analogous because we have gas pressure in the real world and we can demonstrate it with containers and even naturally occurring, right? But we do not know where the physical container of the earth is. We don't know what it is, where it is, what it's made of, how big it is. We know nothing, none of that. We cannot scientifically prove the container of earth. We cannot. We don't know where it is. We can't manipulate it. We present that argument as a logical argument. We say the necessary antecedent to gas pressure is a physical container. That's based on all observable phenomena. That's what we know. That's based on the behavior of gas. Therefore, there must be a container on the earth. That's a logical axiom, just like we see design and order on the earth. Therefore, it must have been placed in order. You see, so that was the analogy there, which is, when the Globers say, "Oh, where is this container? Can you bottle it up for me?" We're like, I don't have to bottle it up. It's a logical argument, right? Sometimes you can present things as arguments without being able to physically manipulate them and verify them individually. No one can verify the physical container of the earth individually, but we can prove it with logic. You kind of see now that got misrepresented as if I was putting ether and gas pressure here beside each other, but that's not what I was doing. I was pointing out the logic, the way that we present that argument. That's not a scientific argument. That's a logical argument because we can't physically manipulate the container. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
I understand your analogy, but how do you relate that then to I understand your analogy concerning the container as me or you, let's say any normal people, certainly I don't know who can, but me or you, we can't go and touch this container. That's true, but we can't do that. Right, we're stuck here where we are. The highest we go is in a commercial airliner. Um, but how do you relate that as an example with ether? What would be your counterpart?
Yeah, good question. So, because what I was saying was we have electromagnetic energy, right? And so, is this energy sustained within something, or could it be sustained by itself within nothing? I also presented it as, what exists outside of this material world? Is there something, or is there nothing? And seeing as how nothing cannot exist, the only logically viable option is that there is something. And I was trying to bridge the gap with that, where you don't have to call it ether. You don't have to go on to make future claims about what it is, what's there, what it's like. Just like I don't have to claim what the container is or what it's made of or anything, right? but like the only option is something or nothing. I boiled it down to a true dichotomy. So logically speaking, I've logically proven that there is something outside the material world. Now, that means that there's a metaphysical realm. I mean, you can call it whatever you want to, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like logically speaking, there has to be something outside of the material world. It can't be nothing. Now the question is, well, we know energy can't be created nor destroyed, so where does it come from? You talked about the first law. Well, where does the energy come from? Does it come from somewhere, or does it come from nowhere? You see what I'm saying? Well, nothing and nowhere cannot exist. That means we only have one option. There's something there. There's something there, and energy can come from it, right? And now when you call it a certain name and you go into all these other claims, that's much like the analogy with God. You can say there's a creator, but you start telling me about your religion. Well, you're making up claims, right? And so that's when I make it very clear. Well, I'm speculating about the ether. I'm trying to figure out what makes the most sense so we can have a framework to work on. But I hope that makes sense. It's logical axiom that something sustains that energy, right? Because we see it come here. And where does it come from if we can't create it? It has to be transferred from somewhere. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I understand your logic behind it. I understand your thinking on it. But your thinking is more, correct me if I'm wrong, but your thinking is more that it's being created as opposed to it's part of a cycle. If you know what I mean. Like, I would view it more as everything else in the world we have, all these natural things seem to be cycles. I'm not saying everything, because I can't say everything, but I can't think of anything offhand that isn't part of some kind of a cycle. So I would view that the creation of electricity and magnetism is part of a cycle. Yeah, well, I mean, I can speculate on it that it could be I could speculate, just pure speculation, that it involves the sun, the moon, the stars, that it involves those, that the cycle involves those, and so it might be a cycle that's not something that we can see happening, because we don't have the knowledge of what the sun, moon, and stars are. But I would view it more, if I was asked about it, I'd have to say, for me, it would be more likely to be a cycle. But you're talking about the creation of the energy, the input of it being input into our system. Is that what you mean? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure, input, not necessarily creation. I agree that it's a cycle, but we have observations that show us that energy doesn't just come from nowhere. But then we devolve into the semantical argument where how do we prove that? And the best we can do is create a vacuum chamber, and we say nature abhors a vacuum, so we just ignore it. And we can just ignore it, but like even in a vacuum chamber, we say electromagnetic fluctuations pop into existence. So that's why I think the best way to go about it is, well, what exists outside the material world? Either something or nothing, right? Like that's a true dichotomy. That's not a false dichotomy. It's something or nothing. And like you could say, well, what is thing? And thing is defined as material. What is exists? Because if you define all the words within the material world, then that's just a semantical diversion as I see it. Right. So it's like, what exists outside the material world? Something does, right? I mean, you and I would agree, if you believe in the creator, he exists outside of this place. He's not limited to matter or time. So like, where does he exist within? Like there's a realm outside of here. And I think that's a fundamental. I didn't think this would be any type of disagreement because of that. I thought I'd bridge the gap where it's like, well, beyond that, you need to really point out that you're speculating and it's just your opinion and you cannot verify the intricacies. I cannot prove to you that the ether is unmanifest pure potential, a rest state of, blah, 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 blah. Like I can't, that's a logical thing. That's like a philosophy. So I don't know if that makes sense. I wouldn't mind if you want to go to the reason this is turning to this whole thing is because I don't care what people think. I don't care if you want to deny the ether. I don't care if someone wants to believe the ether. I don't care. But when we started kind of pretending we were going to be thought police and flat earthers aren't allowed to talk about it and their embarrassments, well, then I had to kind of load the clip because the truth is they're making claims that are actually pseudoscience. So the primary critique on me is that this is pseudoscience. Well, it's not though, because I'm saying this isn't science as in natural science. It's not science, right? So I'm saying this isn't science. It's not scientifically provable. Well, pseudoscience means something's pretending to be science. So automatically, I'm excluded from that. I'm saying it's not science. Now, when you claim photons and electrons are science, that is ironically, by definition, pseudoscience because it's pretending to be science. Now, you see, I had to elucidate that hypocrisy because people were kind of police, being thought police. So you see the problem, and this is what it all comes down to. The whole argument is there can't be an ether light because light's not like a wave because it's a particle. It's a physical chunk. Now that's a claim. Now we've ventured over into making claims, and that's okay. I love when people make claims. I think that's how intellectualism works. But don't pretend it's science and then tell other people they can't disagree because then it's kind of you're in sketchy waters. So if you want to go down to that part now, I'll let you kind of guide where we go. But we can go to the atomic theory part, but I mean, maybe it's best for the audience to see if you agree. Like, do you agree that
Well,
seems to be a decent dichotomy? Now, not a true dichotomy. You can come up with a million different things, but do you agree that the only two ones ever really proposed is like atomic theory and then ether? Like that's the two fundamental ones that we have to try to interpret the world with.
well, what I would say about it is the ether, from what I can gather, is a belief that there is an interaction with the world from outside of the 3D world. It would be an interaction of some kind. Would you agree with that as a description?
Yeah, it interacts with the material world, certainly. Yeah.
It's not material itself.
No, not the way that we define it as tangible matter. No.
Well, if we look at something, I see a lot like I don't, and I know Nathan, and I don't ever hear anyone. Just to give an explanation of our position over there, we have never claimed. I have never claimed, and I don't know because I don't know. I haven't researched enough about it to claim that the atomic model is science. I would have told someone that the atomic model is a description. Now I could be wrong about that because, as I said about the thing with the gold foil and the helium nuclei, that could be part of the origins of there being this tiny macro level where the atomic model comes from. But for me, the atomic model is based on three things: protons, which is positive charge, electrons, negative charge, and neutrons, which are neutrally charged.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was always just a description. If you look at the atomic model, the substances or materials with the most neutrons are the most dense. Because what are neutrons? They're just a way of describing innate matter. Whereas the protons and the electrons, sometimes they're described. The description of them is silly, where they have electrons orbiting protons, whereas that's not actually correct. As per the actual original model or whatever, I don't think that's actually correct. That is actually a bit. It's something I think maybe was added in later. I don't know. I can't say much about that, but I know that that's not correct. As in that description is there for a different reason, not that they're actually meant to be orbiting around the electron, is orbiting around the proton. But if you look at neutrons, the material with the most neutrons, something like gold, will be very, very dense. So neutrons is basically just a way of describing innate matter, whereas the proton is describing a positive charge, the neutron or the electron is describing a negative charge. And so it's used in that way to as a way of basically describing density. I often view it as a way of describing the density. If you look at how hydrogen is described and then how helium is described. Helium, I think hydrogen is just one proton and one electron, whereas helium, I think, is one proton and two electrons or something like that, or one proton, one neutron or something like that. So it starts having more density. So if you look down the atomic model, it's basically describing, besides if you take the positive and negative charge out of it, it's describing density. It's describing density, and because number one is hydrogen, number two is helium, number three I don't know, or four. But the point is that each one of them seem to run on a density scale. So they're starting off with what is the least dense. Now, when we look at something like a description like a massless particle, which is what they say light is, right? Now that doesn't make any sense on its face value. And for me, I laughed at it for a long time because it made no sense. Well, the word mass is a load of nonsense anyway, because there's three different definitions for mass. But I understand, when I thought about it, I understood what they meant. Why they call it a massless particle, I believe, right, using logic, why they call it light a massless particle is because light is I could not claim that light has no density, but I could claim that I have no way of measuring if it has density. So
Okay.
calling it a massless particle might have been a bad description for that, but that doesn't make it, might have been a bad description, but that doesn't mean that it's set in stone or whatever. If you understand what I mean? I can't measure the density of light, so I can't claim light does or doesn't have density, because it would be, if it has density, then it's so low on the density scale that's beyond what I could measure. If that
Gotcha.
helps.
Yeah, just real fast, because I did say I'd read the super chats. Hellboy, hell yeah, RIP magnetism. This is Branch, by the way. Thank you for the super chat, Branch. And then he sent another one that was $50, which is very generous. He said, shout out to Shines. Thank you for the super chat, Hellboy. And then Theo just said, God doesn't exist within a realm. He doesn't exist at all. He is pure being, hence the title I am. We exist, and all realms exist within him. Okay, that's a cool claim. So, to address what you're saying, so when they say, okay, the neutron, right? In that it's innate matter. Well, but the neutron is claimed to be a little bitty part of an atom. The atom has never been seen, right? We use electronic manipulation. We have like computers render images similar to what they do in the sky. They render images with electric charge. So pressure mediates with all these different charges, and then they render an image. You can't see a photo. You can't see an atom. You don't grab an atom. None of that's real. Neutrons are even smaller than that. Now, I do agree that there's a relationship between the density and how they have defined it through an atomic theory. That's why I don't even say that the model is useless. It is. We use it for chemistry and stuff, right? But it's just a conceptual model. My point is, people speak of it as if it is real. And a conceptual model used to quantify, built upon math, claiming physical little spheres, is identical to the globe, which is just a model in everyone's head where they use math, and then they pretend that since they can bring the math up and say, look, my math works, therefore Earth's a globe. And they do the same thing. And with the whole like positive and negative charge, well, that's also just a model. That's a convention, so we can use math to describe it. There's no such thing as negative charge. What does that even mean, right? There's charge and discharge, but how do you math out and write it in an equation? You have to put a negative for discharge because you have to be able to math it out. So that's what they did. And they claim that the electron is matter. Okay. And so every claim about light being a photon is built upon the claim about an electron. So it's like a rabbit hole of pseudoscience. You actually can't claim that light's a physical particle called a photon without claiming the electron, because that's what the photoelectric effect is, parametric down conversion. All these require that claim. When it comes to the density or lack thereof of light, well, I would say that's further down the road once we actually can get a working definition of what light is. I don't think anyone will ever fully understand light. I just personally feel the way that people claim it, what they claim about it right now, is ridiculous. Okay, and this is our disagreement, and I think it's best to agree to disagree, but to try to pretend one has more value than the other is where we come into a problem, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is the atomic model is just a model. It's a convention made by humans to quantify things. It is not real. It is not materially verifiable. It's nowhere close to science. And you did say that. You said it's just a description. This is the problem, though. When you now claim that light's a photon, you're claiming that model is real. You're claiming the electron is physically a real thing of matter. And so now we got to we got to pump the brakes.
The problem is I'm being handed the atomic model as, to me, it's a false dichotomy. It's either you have the atomic model or you have ether. That's the way it feels that it's been handed. It's like I didn't make claims about the atomic model. I just described what it seemed to be. As far as like when I looked at it and what it seemed to be, just as a way of like a density scale. I know that there is people out there who will say for definite that the atom exists and there is evidence for it. I haven't looked into it, right? Other than what I was saying earlier, but I didn't look into that. It was something was said to me about the nuclei from the helium going through the gold foil, but and bouncing back off of something or whatever. But the point I'm making is I can't go with it has to be either atoms, the atomic model, or it has to be ether. It's like I don't know what light is. I don't know how to find out what light is. I know there's a claim that it is a particle, and that's a description of what hits the photoelectric plate, right? that chunk, that whatever. When I say like what ends up being on the photoelectric plate, right? That they call that a particle, right? Isn't it? That's the basics of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So like I can only go by what they say. I haven't been there. I haven't done it, and I've seen the pictures of it or whatever. But the thing about it is that I can't latch onto the atomic model and say, yeah, I hold that up as science or something like that, because I don't. I don't hold it up as anything because I don't have enough information to hold it up as anything. To me, it's always been just a description. But for me, Aether is just one second. Aether is so, see, the thing about the atomic model is that is something that's kind of referenced as being in the 3D world, whereas Aether is referenced as being outside the 3D world. And that's the issue we have, right, on Nathan's, is that we just came out of a situation some years ago where with all this stuff we were told was real, and we found out it wasn't real. When we looked into it, it wasn't real. There wasn't Earth curve. The Earth is not rotating. All these things, they weren't real. All these distances to all these supposed stars, the sun, all this was not real. So for us to just take something else that we can't verify as being real is a big ask. Although the atomic model, for me, it's a description, because that's how I view it. We have a scalar for density and a way of describing things on the micro scale or macro scale. But that is, for me, a tool that I can use, right? I don't know if there is atoms, but I know it's a tool I can use. But I would rather talk about that as a way of describing 3D reality to someone than to start talking about how we have this medium that is, I've heard it's been said on Globebusters that it's very dense and no dense. How can you decide what density something has if you can't experience it? Mm-hmm. And that light, it requires it to travel through. It's like there's no evidence of this. Yeah. So to make that claim is, you have to understand, especially with us, we are the really is level on Nathan's. So
you're not, though. You're not on the really is level. That's my point. You're not. You claim light is a particle. That's not the really is level. That's literally pseudoscience. That's not the really is level.
Well, that light as a particle is a description of what hits the photographic plate.
You're assuming something hits it. You're assuming that it travels, and you're assuming a particle. It's called a reification fallacy. It's by definition pseudoscience. It's nowhere close to the really is level. Not even remotely close.
So how would you describe what's happening then between when I'll have to describe it this way, when it's fired to when it shows up on the plate? How would you describe that?
Yeah. Okay. Now, of course, falsification is independent of replacement, and I'm asking for proof of your positive claim that we know light's a physical photon. But I will answer it. I will answer it. Light's comprised of an oscillating. Light is. FED is making the claim that light's a photon, and very boldly. And in fact, telling everyone they're an embarrassment to flat Earth if they don't believe it. And in fact, relativity requires the speed of light, and the distances to the sky in their little model requires the speed of light. That's why they believe that it has to be a physical particle traveling, because the person that came up with the definition of the photon, the quanta definition of light, is Albert Einstein, literally. But my point is, if you want to ask what I think, okay, well, we know that there's electromagnetic radiation everywhere you see light. You can't find light anywhere without electromagnetic radiation. Now, what the claim is as well, but the photon is inside of that and just drags it with it, and the photon doesn't have charge or have magnetic properties. The photon isn't real, though. So, of course, you can't find a charge. It's not a real thing. So it's actually an oscillating electric field, an oscillating magnetic field, and they intersect with each other like a coaxial cable. They intersect, and where they intersect, they call that a photon. And it's not an actual individual thing. It's an event. It's the fields moving with each other. Okay, and now you have a plate. Now they don't travel. It's already there. It just begins to oscillate, and you create a vibration or disturbance that oscillates, magnetic and dielectric, or electrostatic, and then you have the plate there. Now the plate then registers a pulse. Now what they're claiming is that the photon travels and hits the plate. It's like you're shooting a BB gun at it. That is not what actually happens, though. And so they say, well, there's a photon that comes and hits the atoms of the plate, then dislodges the electron from its orbit, and then the electron is free, and then the photon exchanges information to or energy to the electron, morphs with it, becomes a photoelectron, and that's where you get the dots. So every time someone claims that the little dots prove light's a photon, they're claiming all that as well. It doesn't matter if they want to say it or admit it or breeze past it. That's the definition of the photographic plate that you're invoking. It says that a photon hits an atom, dislodges an electron, has an interaction, then morphs into a photoelectron and gives you a dot. All that is pseudoscience. None of that's real. The photon's not proven. The electron's not proven. The atom itself is not proven. Right? Now, if you think that makes more sense, you're saying that you'd rather describe it that way. That's why I said it's a philosophical decision. It's a philosophical discussion. Go for it. If you think the philosophy of atomism, the invisible bombarding particles going everywhere that we can never prove, is real and everything's made up of matter because nothing can be outside the material world, that's your own prerogative. But that is a philosophy, and it actually stems from Democritus, which is materialism, right? So that's all I'm saying. Like, can you prove any of that happens? Can you prove that a photon hits an atom, dislodges an electron, and then turns into a photoelectron and then makes a dot up here? Can we prove any of that?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Talking about a photon is, for best of my knowledge, is a description, and the atomic model is also a description, a theory of description. But it's described. Why I say I would rather talk to someone and use those terms as opposed to the ether is that those terms are based in a description of something happening in the 3D world. So whereas with ether, it's not something that's happening in the 3D world. It's something that's claimed to be interacting from outside. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it's like it's the best of two worlds, or two choices, if you want to see it that way. If I had to describe it, now that's if I had to describe it. But like I just can't, like if ether is if ether is something that interacts outside of our 3D reality, something we can't experience, then how can I claim to someone that this is caused by this ether that I can't show or anything? At least with the atomic model, I have something that I have to as a way of explaining. Like
You can't show it either, bro.
Yeah, but I can give a description.
I can give a description that the Earth's a ball that spins in a vacuum, man. I can give a description of why Superman flies.
What about power lines?
What about them?
Power lines, like the power lines, they have what they claim to have electric charge running through them. They claim to have electrons, what they call electrons, running through them.
Yeah, huge misconception, actually, even within the mainstream, like energy doesn't go through wires. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Between the power station and your home or whatever, right? But what they stated was that it's not that's not what's happening. It's that it's an electric and magnetic field, electromagnetic field, or electric field and a magnetic field that are running around along the cable, right? That is bringing the power. That's why the power doesn't. That's why you don't bring power back to the power station. It goes to your home, but you don't send it back, right? But could this happen without the cables? And what's going on inside the cables?
Well, the cables, again, like you said, it doesn't go inside through the cables. It's a huge misconception. And there's just, the cables are creating a coherent disturbance that gives you electricity around those cables. It's already there. There's no evidence that it's traveling anywhere. There's no evidence that it's made up of electrons. So as you see how what you brought up comes back to another reification fallacy of the electron. Now, the problem is when we look into the electron, dude, it is 1,000,000 times more pseudoscience than the ether could ever be, dude. The electron, you can't make a claim about a photon without the electron. You can't make a claim about electricity without the electron. You can't make a claim about magnetism without the electron. You can't make a claim about electrostatics without the electron. You can't even claim light's a particle without the electron. That's how they claim to prove it. There is no evidence for the electron. They claim that it's never at rest, but we'll just guess a resting mass. And it's matter, but we can't actually tell that it's matter. So we have to get a charge of it, a charge to mass ratio, assuming it's matter. And then they say, well, it's matter, but it's called a point particle. So it doesn't have volume or size. So it's matter without a size. And this is all what the claim of the electron is. You can't detach yourself from it, but then use it. So like you said, it's a description, but it's an inadequate one. We use it to quantify things, and that's cool, but it is nowhere close to science. In fact, it is taught as science. It is taught as science. Therefore, it is by definition pseudoscience. Only one side of this is pseudoscience, and that's why it's so ironic. And that's why I was getting Fundy muted, and that's why I was getting strawman. Because when I get to say this, there is no rebuttal. What's the rebuttal? Electrons are pseudoscience. There's no rebuttal.
But you're coming with the positive claim. You're giving me this positive claim of atoms and the atomic model, something that I didn't claim and Nathan and them didn't claim on today. So if you're coming with anyone who comes, regardless of who they are, if you come with a positive claim, then you switching that to someone else's claim or supposed claim or giving them a claim, that's not proving your claim.
He's making a claim that light is a photon. He's made the claim boldly, yelled it at the top of his lungs, and it's been in his description for like 5 years. He is making a claim.
Okay, but he's claiming that they call that a photon, the thing on the photographic plate, right? Now,
you're claiming that a photon hits the photographic plate, yeah.
You're claiming that the ether is a medium that is needed for light to propagate through.
Well, not propagate through from point A to point B. The background medium is light.
But but at that stage, light is ether.
Light is a version of the ether. That's correct.
You're just calling light a different name at that stage.
Well, it's a more accurate, viable name, though.
Yeah, but you're not proving anything. Then you're just changing the name from light to ether, which is just another description.
But it's actually viable. You're not proving that it's a photon either, but somehow we're supposed to bow down to FED and say, yes, sir, it's a photon. No, you are the FE cult members. And no, that's not going to happen.
Came in with the positive claim.
No.
If you come with a positive claim, you have to support. There's no point in pointing at other people's claims or claims you want to give them. You have to support your positive claim.
All right. My positive claim was that the current, it's a critique of the positive claim of the double slit, which is that a physical photon travels through a slit and hits a photographic plate. I challenged that. I said that's insane, because then they say when they detect it that the photon knows it's being observed and stops letting us detect it, and that it can transcend time and alter events that have already happened, because relativity needs light to travel from point A to point B and have a constant speed. And all physicists are working within relativity because they have to keep the ball Earth alive. So they've made up all this nonsense. And the truth is, light's just already there. So all I'm doing is critiquing it, and then I'm replacing it with a more viable option where I don't have to pretend that the photon is a god that can transcend time. See, I've made it clear. I'm not claiming you can scientifically prove the ether. I'm saying it's the most logically viable option. And when you claim the photon, you're claiming pseudoscience.
Yeah, but no, hang on. The other day on Nathan's, my question to you was, like, when it was read out that Bob had said that there was scientific evidence to support the ether. Now, that means in scientific terms, and you know this, that means that would make the ether a scientific theory, right? When I asked you what that would mean, that there has to be scientific experiment that adheres to scientific method for it to be a scientific theory, I asked you about that, and you said that your dependent variable was magnetism and your independent variable was electricity. Yeah. But there are two things that we have already described. Okay. We already interact with those things. We already have a description of those things. But that's not, that's a massive leap to go from that to ether. How do you bridge that gap?
Well, you wouldn't know because no one let me say it. So how would you even possibly know what my argument was about that if I wasn't allowed to even speak? So I said that Bob was saying, now, of course, I'm Austin. I'm not Bob. Okay. Now, but I was explaining and giving context. Bob is saying, well, there is science that supports the ether. That's what he's saying. He's saying that the framework of the ether is viable with all the science that we do have. He's not claiming you can science the ether individually. Now, if he is, because he does sometimes define it differently than I do, I don't care. That's not my claim. In fact, half the conversation with Oakley was muting me and then screaming about what Bob said as if it was my claim, but it's not. And I already gave context to it. I said, now, in the context of how I just now described it, which is we have science on the earth that makes more sense with that framework, I brought up magnetism because we can manipulate a magnet. We can introduce electrical voltage. You can use heat to do it. You can make a magnet many different ways. It's naturally occurring. There's magnetism already everywhere. We find rocks in the ground that are magnetic. Right? So we know that we have electricity, electrostatics, and magnetism. So we can manipulate it and try to figure out the cause. We know that electricity affects magnetism directly. It's a cause of magnetism, right? There's a relationship there. We know that. We can't have any electricity in the world without magnetism. It's a relationship that goes back and forth. the reason I brought that up is we can scientifically prove magnetism is a thing. We can scientifically prove electricity is a thing. We can scientifically prove they have a relationship, a cause-effect relationship. Now, the question is, can we logically interpret that? And the ether can, atomism cannot. It claims it's the exchange of virtual photons that don't actually exist and are never the input or output of any experiment and is just a mathematical equation. So that was my point. Now FED has chosen they think it's a bulletproof side by saying, I'm not making any claims. And they sit back and then they just critique other people. It's kind of like if I take an ACT and I make a 33 and you're like, you're so stupid, you only made a 33. And I'm like, well, what'd you make? Oh, I didn't take the test. I just know you're wrong. It's like, well, that's useless. So like, that's why I brought up magnetism, but I wasn't allowed to speak. And for obvious reasons, because already in the 50 minutes that we've been on here, you can see it's a much different, all of a sudden what I'm saying makes sense. Right. And so, I mean, I don't know if you understand the disconnect there.
No, you have to understand. I'm not saying I agree with what you're saying. I'm here asking questions because I still, up to tonight, and I don't know whether this will change anything, still have no idea what ether is supposed to be, simply because everybody has a different definition of it. It's not something we can experience in the 3D world, and everyone has a different definition of it. At least with the atomic model, not that I'm trying to hold it up as something, as some kind of something to worship, but at least with that, people are in some kind of accordance with it. It's not, maybe not perfect, I don't know, but the point is that when it comes to ether, your claim about ether and Bob's claim about ether is different. And you did claim, like when Bob said there was scientific evidence to support the ether, that's not true. There might be scientific evidence, but that doesn't mean it supports the ether. That means there is scientific evidence of something, but that doesn't mean it supports ether, because ether is something that's not experienceable. We can't experience ether. So how can we say what supports it?
Like I said,
you understand the logic?
I understand what you're saying, but it's a grasp at straws. So now I'm not Bob, but once again, I would phrase it a little different. I would have said there's a ton of scientific evidence that goes to support the logical framework of interpretation of the ether, because it is the only viable option. Now, if you had to say all that, you still would have got triggered, right? So we can pretend that it's just about how he phrased it, but it's not. The point, I just gave you a very specific example. We have magnetism. We can it is science, because that's a naturally occurring phenomenon. That means we can try to figure out what it is. When we do that, now, how are we going to interpret what's going on? Now, the idea is that science eliminates inference, eliminates interpretation. We just see it. Yeah, we see it. Electricity, magnetism. What's going on, though? Right? Because science does nothing for you if you don't have any logic to understand it. So when I ask what's going on, it's been 4 weeks now, and no one from the other side can even utter a definition of magnetism. So how can you critique what we're trying to speculate and figure out when you can't even answer what it is?
I'll tell you what the problem is that you're trying to promote something that is no different to us and no different to the world than general relativity.
Like photons.
The ether is part of general and special relativity.
No.
It is. Einstein,
no, it's not.
Einstein even stated it, that it wouldn't be possible without the ether. That's what he stated.
It's a lack of context.
Hang on. The original ether was a spiritual belief, and then it became a medium for light, right, as a wave to propagate through. That is what it became. That is the history of it. Einstein, and you can't say that's not true, because QE reads out the citations from him.
And said he didn't understand it.
But it's part of, you're saying he didn't understand it, but it's like, how many different definitions, who does understand it?
I understand it.
Definition is different. Well, no, if you say you understand it, but someone else will have a different definition, and they say they understand it.
Well, you want me to
definitions of this thing. No one can give you one thing. Einstein said is that one thing he's supposedly quoted as saying is that if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. And I have yet to get a simple explanation for what the ether is, and I'll never be able to get one, simply because it's not experienceable in 3D world.
You mean like your photon? So let me address.
Photon? When did I claim a photon? You keep on handing
FED's been claiming light's a physical particle for weeks.
Dude. 1 second. You keep handing me something that I didn't claim. So what you're doing is you're handing me my argument. That's called a straw man.
Is light a physical particle? Yes or no?
I don't know what it is.
Has Nathan Oakley been claiming it is?
What has that got to do with you proving ether?
Well, see what I'm saying? That's
But
blatant dishonesty. It's blatant dishonesty.
That's called deflection. You're moving away from the argument.
No, I'm not.
You're making a positive claim about ether, and then all you can talk about is electricity and magnetism. And that's grand. I understand that. It would be good to know what's causing electricity and magnetism, how it works. But you can't go around claiming it's ether.
You mean like you can't go around claiming the photon?
Where do I go around claiming the photon? Where did I go claiming?
The FED panel's been claiming light's a physical particle called the photon for 5 years.
Where did Brian's logic go claiming photons?
You have no problem with the panel that you're on doing it, but you all think that you're the self-elected leaders that get to go critique me talking about.
So what do they claim about photons? What does Nathan claim about photons?
Nathan claims that light's a physical particle called a photon.
Yeah, that's how it's described. Yeah.
Okay, that's called pseudoscience.
It's described as a massless particle. Is that what?
That's ridiculous.
Right. That's how it's described. So Nathan is just restating how it's described.
Okay, I could just restate how the globe Earth is described.
That's all he's doing when he's describing it. He's restating how it's described.
No, he states it as a definitive fact.
Now, am I going around the place, right, making positive claims about photons? No.
Yeah, you are.
Are you making positive claims about ether? Yes.
I'm making a logical, so I've said very clearly that it's a philosophical, logical framework. It's immaterial. It cannot be quantified, nor can it be physically manipulated in science. It is a logical framework. When we look at all the evidence we do have in the material world, it is the only logically viable framework of interpretation, that there's a metaphysical realm that interacts with the physical. All other claims that have been proposed to this point are logically bankrupt and make no sense. FED has decided to say, I don't care. I'm not making any claims about anything. But then they turn around and they talk about photons, and they claim that photons debunk the ether. It's so incredibly ignorant. And I got to address this though, Brian, because Brian, I got to address this because you keep saying this for weeks now. You keep saying
on there with things. I have to be able to address.
Okay, fair enough. Go ahead.
The ether was initially in history was claimed to be a medium for light to propagate through, and light as a wave to propagate through. But people, it's been disproven that it is a wave. Whether it's been proven to be something else, it's been disproven to be a wave. Because the wave part was only a mathematical formula.
Yeah. Waves aren't things in and of themselves. They're just a type of movement.
The whole point. The whole point was that ether was supposed to be was supposed to be the medium that light as a wave propagated through. But the wave part was just a mathematical formula.
No, so you don't understand it. The ether is what the light is, and it's moving within that.
Yeah, that's not the original claim.
Have you read on
ether was a medium for light as a wave to propagate through?
But not physically travel from point A to point B. And even if it is, I'm not making that claim.
What's a wave then?
Okay, a wave is just a type of movement. So a wave is a verb. It's not what something is. I can wave my hand. I can't hand you a wave. Yeah, you have to have a medium to have a wave. If something's moving, they claim the photon moves like a wave, bro.
The wave part was only a mathematical formula. It was only a distribution pattern. That's all it was. So the wave part wasn't even. It was only a description of something mathematical.
Of the movement. Of movement.
It was a description of different hits on the plate.
Which is based on its alleged movement, which is assuming that it travels, which I'm saying it doesn't. I have to address this misconception about the whole ether and Einstein, though, okay? So, for one...
Hang on, 1 second. It can't be a misconception if there's quotation from Einstein.
I know, I can remember the quotation off the top of my head, okay? So, what he said was, space-time must have physical properties. In this sense, there must exist an ether. Because if we don't have physical properties, then we don't have any way to apply time intervals or measuring rods or clocks. But this is not to be thought of as a medium that can have motion applied to it. Okay, now, if you actually understand the context, he's literally saying it can't be like what the electrical field theory ether was. It's not a medium. The only way that we'll say that there's an ether is the sense that space-time has to have physical properties, which the ether that had been proposed before that did. He needed physical properties to say that everything's bending and warping. So he said, in this sense, in the sense that it does still have physical properties like the old ether, there exists an ether. But it's not like that ether. It can't be like that ether. There's nothing except for space and time there. That's the whole point. That's fundamentally different. And I can read right here where Einstein, this is what Albert Einstein said. He's talking about Michelson-Morley. This is why he had to propose this, is because of Michelson-Morley. He said, if the Michelson-Morley experiment had not brought us into serious embarrassment, no one would have regarded the relativity theory as a halfway redemption. What he's saying is that Michelson-Morley, when we looked at the interferometry, it showed the Earth wasn't orbiting if there was an ether. That was a medium. So they had to throw the medium out and claim that there was no ether. Then he came back around and had to propose a replacement, which was relativity. If it wasn't for Michelson-Morley, no one would even considered it because relativity is stupid in many ways. But they accepted it because there's no other way. A halfway redemption is how he described it. He goes on later to explain that because of physical properties, in that sense, there does still exist an ether, but not like what they used to say, because there can't be a medium, because that would disprove that the Earth is moving. Now that's what actually happened. And so we're leaving all the context out, and it's just ridiculous.
Crazy there. Sorry, no, I don't mean to be insulting, but your logic has gone crazy there. Because basically what you're stating is, if the ether doesn't exist, the Earth is rotating.
No, that's not. See, that's okay.
You're relying.
No, that's a straw man.
That was the whole point of it. Is that
that's a straw man?
Well, it's no, right? Well, yeah, it is a straw man. It is a straw man because that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying. Because if ether doesn't exist, then according to Michelson-Morley, that means that the Earth must be rotating.
No. With or without the ether, the Michelson-Morley doesn't show any movement of the Earth. It detects sidereal rotation within 98% accuracy of their prediction, and that's because the sky moves. Actually, Michelson-Morley and Michelson-Gell just debunk it with or without the ether. But they had to throw the ether away because if there is an ether, then that means that the Earth irrefutably couldn't be moving, and they had to come up with some way to explain it away. So they threw the ether out. That's step one. Then they said that space gets smaller when it's in motion, so that they could say that what measured it was shrinking and contracting physically. Then they said time got wider and slowed down. That's why it looked like it was the same, even though it was actually going further and having to travel longer. This is all the pseudoscience. Now, we can prove the Earth's not moving a million different ways. You can look at Airy's failure. You can just start with the base axiom. No one's ever measured the Earth moving. There's no physical empirical evidence that the Earth is moving. All observations show us that it's not moving, and all we ever see is that the sky moves. So I don't need the ether. If there doesn't exist an ether, that doesn't mean the Earth is moving. That's insane. In order to claim the Earth is moving, the first step is that you have to throw the ether out. The second step is that you have to claim space and time have physical properties so that you can explain away the interferometry with or without the ether, right? That's what's actually happening. And then he has to say that even though it does detect a difference, it's just the instrument error because he couldn't even figure it out. And he had to say that the measuring apparatus got smaller. This is what actually happened. So when people run around saying that relativity and ether are the same, it's literally the opposite of what happened.
Right. Now, when it comes to interferometry, right, there was no, right, whatever Michelson-Morley did, there was no natural phenomenon for them to study for that, was there? What's the natural phenomenon?
What's the natural phenomenon of the double slit?
That's not the point. It's the fraction.
I'm pointing out the hypocrisy.
The fraction is the natural phenomenon.
No, you define the fraction as light traveling. That's a presupposition.
I don't define that at all. I define the fraction as my eyes see it, with an optician's wall chart, where things appear to amalgamate.
Okay, I don't want anyone to think I'm being dishonest, so I'll answer your question. Interferometry, there's not a naturally occurring phenomena other than light exists. We created interferometry to measure things. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's a demonstration. It's not a scientific experiment. That's cool, right? Now, FED calls it a parlor trick. But then they invoke the double slit. That's the problem. And now, so what does Michelson-Morley do? It uses mirrors and lasers. What does double slit do? Oh, it uses crystals and lasers and double slits and photographic plates. So they're like almost identical on its face. And one's a parlor trick and one is scientific experiment. Well, now you guys have walked it back and now you don't call it a scientific experiment anymore. Now you
Well,
say it's not one.
No, well, the double slit is a demonstration. The quantum eraser, I don't know much about it, but the quantum eraser, as far as I know, is a science experiment.
No, it's
But
not though.
The naturally observed phenomenon is diffraction. That's what they're based on, is diffraction. That's what they are based on. So there is
Yeah.
something, right? There is something behind the investigation. Whereas with Michelson-Morley, what was the something? That the sky was appearing to move?
Did you know there's also diffraction in Michelson-Morley, right?
Well, there's always diffraction.
Game over.
There's always diffraction.
Game over. Then we have a naturally occurring phenomena just like a
but
double slit.
they
So how
didn't
come
state
one's a
that.
parlor
That's
trick
not
and one's
stated
not?
it's not game over. They didn't state that as a naturally observed phenomenon. They didn't state any naturally observed phenomenon.
Yeah, inside the documentation, which is called Detecting Motion of the Earth Through the Ether, it's understood that they're examining the phenomenon of diffraction. It's laid out in detail.
So they claim diffraction was their naturally observed phenomenon.
Well, you're splitting light. Yeah. So
Michelson-Morley claimed that.
Yeah. It also has the independent variable, or it also has the naturally occurring phenomena of diffraction. So how is one?
But did they state that as did they state that as a dependent variable?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm not claiming. No, but see, what you're not understanding is I just said it's not a scientific experiment. It's a demonstration of value that we can learn things. Now, when you turn around and say that's a parlor trick, but then you invoke the double slit, you got a problem. And we also utilize the effect of the naturally occurring phenomena of diffraction in Michelson-Morley. So how is the double slit a scientific experiment?
Well, the double slit is a demonstration. You can do the double slit with a candle. If you understand, it's a demonstration, as far as I know.
So is Michelson-Morley. So why can FED talk about double slit all day, every day, with it all in its descriptions, but we can't talk about Michelson-Morley?
It's called the Michelson-Morley experiment. That's what it's called.
Okay, it's called the double slit experiment.
Yeah, but there is more than one. I'm not sure. I don't know all the details of it, but there is more than it's connected. I think part of that is the reason is because it's connected to the quantum eraser.
Quantum eraser is not a scientific experiment either, and you're admitting you don't know about it. So let me read the super chat real fast. I don't want to get too. I appreciate you coming on here, so I don't want to get too worked up. I don't want to start interrupting each other. Jaronism says, Brian, why don't you admit your crew is in no position to tell anyone they're an embarrassment based on your misunderstandings? You want to respond? I mean, so I have to read the super chat. I'm sorry.
I don't have misunderstandings. Jaron misunderstands. I will give a response. Jaron Campanella stated in the past week that science only disproves things. Well, that is obviously a misunderstanding himself. He doesn't understand. What about the things that, like, every time you disprove your independent variable, you ad hoc prove something. So you're proving that is not the cause of that. So independent variable A is not the cause of dependent variable B. So that means A here is not causing B. That's proving something. But what about when you do prove your positive hypothesis? Because at that point you're proving your null. So when you do prove your positive hypothesis, that's proving something.
Okay.
Does he think that, like, I mean, it, like, the simplest one is the water boiling temperature of water at sea level pressure. That was proven. So is that not proven?
Okay.
So there is somebody who has never had anything to do with me, right? And yet he thinks he can just make that statement.
All right. So
since 2015, I'd say he don't even know that.
All right. Okay. So for one, I just want you to know that I have exposed it, right? And this is why they had to funny mute me. They put in their description that the double slit is an experiment. Brian, please don't start interrupting me, man. I just let you talk, man. So they put it. This is what Globers do to me. So whenever I exposed it, which is that they're claiming the double slit's an experiment. If you say Michelson-Morley experiment, they'll scream at you before you finish the phrase, say, what's an experiment? If that's not an experiment, you're not allowed to talk about it. But they're allowed to talk about the double slit experiment. And in their description, they call it an experiment, and they invoke it as definitive evidence of light being a physical particle called the photon, which is by definition pseudoscience. To address your thing about the science, I actually don't fully disagree with you. I think the answer is nuanced, okay? What this is you can demonstrate, you can prove that there is a cause and effect relationship. You can prove it. When you manipulate heat, water boils. When you manipulate pressure, water boils. That goes to show you, if you say that the sole causal agent of water boiling is heat, that's wrong, because actually there's a nuance there. It's also pressure.
No,
So
you have that wrong. No. At
I
sea
can
level pressure,
okay. Okay.
this
So you
exact temperature causes the boiling.
if I keep the same temperature but change the pressure, can I make water boil?
Yeah, but that's won't be sea level pressure. That's the
But
point.
okay,
The
that's
aim
what I'm
is
saying.
sea level pressure. Do you understand?
Okay, there you go. So what you have proven is that at a control variable of a certain pressure, that heat makes water boil. But you have not proven that that's the only causal agent, because there's another one. You had to control the pressure. And that's what
Yeah.
Jaren's trying to say. Now, there's a nuance. I would say it like this. I think people need to be careful with how they say things. You can prove things with science, meaning you can show definitively with replication, this causes this to happen. But that does not mean that it is the sole causal agent. Perfect example, when they used the egg and water and they poured salt in it, right? Now they're claiming that proves density disequilibrium. I had a hypothesis. It was that the density, blah, blah, blah. Which a 5-year-old knows that by throwing a beach ball in the air. We don't need that. And then take it to the bottom of a pool, right? But either way, I get that. But the point is, when you go claim that's the only thing that causes things to go up and down, you're now falsely claiming science when you do not have the answer. You did not definitively prove that's the only cause.
The
That's the
density of
problem.
the medium is the reason for the vector of all matter.
Is that the only reason?
That is the only reason.
So you're making a claim. Now, this is why we're calling
Yeah.
it out, okay?
The structure
Because
it's the
I can prove that's wrong.
support of matter.
I
The
can prove that's
structural
wrong.
support of matter.
I can prove that's wrong.
How do you prove that that's wrong?
I can manipulate electrostatics when keeping the medium the same and make things float.
Right? You can make what float?
Any object in the world.
So you can make my
Rubber.
phone float, right? And would you have to put that into a Van de Graaff generator?
Okay.
Yeah. So you'll have to, what you'll have to do is put my phone into a Van de Graaff. Now, I've never seen anything other than iron foilings and bits of hair and stuff in a Van de Graaff generator floating.
Okay.
But you said you can make my phone float in the well, are you stating that will float in the Van de Graaff generator?
No, now
I don't want to
I can take a little piece of your phone. I can scrape a little piece of your phone
Yeah,
off
but
and
we're
make
not
it float.
talking about a little piece. We're talking about a phone.
Yeah, so let me finish, Brian. Okay, so it would take so much electrostatics to make something that heavy float, right? That a little Van de Graaff generator wouldn't do it. Technically, I can make you float, but I would kill you to do it. The point is, we can take any
Yeah,
type
so
of matter
it's
in the
not-
world
it's
and make it
proven
float.
the same.
We can take any type of matter in the world and make it float. What's the naturally occurring observable phenomena? Electrostatics. Everything that exists is electrostatic.
You've just
Now we
disproven
can
the
use.
claim.
Now we're going to manipulate that dependent variable. We're going to manipulate independent variable of.
What are you going to do?
We're gonna use the Van de Graaff generator to increase the electrostatic charge and make something float. That proves that it makes something float. Game over.
But that proves that within that apparatus, you can make this happen to very small things. That has nothing to do with the vector direction of matter in our world.
Why not?
Because you needed a Van de Graaff generator to generate the effect to happen. We don't see this effect you had to generate, and you can only make it work with very small pieces of matter.
You could make it work with something else. You would need a much bigger Van de Graaff generator. But are you saying there's any
nature, is it?
Dude, Brian, buddy, everything in nature is electrostatic.
That's a great claim because we've debated on this before.
Name one thing. Name one thing that's not.
One thing that's not electrostatic. I'm not making the claim that everything is or is not.
So
you're making the claim, and yet you were making the claim that the reason you're making the claim that the reason.
He agrees with me on this, by the way, Brian. You might want to pump the brakes.
Right, the reason that that things go down and go up is due to electrostatics.
I said that it is definitely a part of the cause. That's right. We can prove it.
A part of the cause. So I need to get a bit more. In depth on this then.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because that's all you guys do is strawman me.
Okay, so let's check. I have a load of buckets. My first bucket has vacuum in it. My second bucket has air in it. My third bucket has fresh water. My fourth bucket has salt water. My fifth bucket has honey, and my sixth bucket has mercury. Right?
Okay.
If I drop my phone into each one of them, it will fall faster. Or sorry, starting at the vacuum, it will fall fastest in the vacuum and go slower all the way to the honey, where it may not even reach the bottom due to the density of the honey. And in the mercury, it'll just float on the top.
Okay.
So that's all these different mediums, the same exact thing, but due to the medium and the density of the medium, there's a different effect.
Do you think that I'm denying that?
Well, you're claiming that there is another outside partial cause, but you're not. We've heard this claim from you and from Globebusters for some time, and you have yet to actually demonstrate it.
No, we did
You're not
demonstrate it.
demonstrating it.
We did demonstrate
The
it.
Van de Graaff generator is not a demonstration.
Oh, now we have the double
Outside-
standards
That's
popping out again.
outside the natural world. We're talking about
Okay.
the natural 3D world we live in.
All right, let's talk about this. So we have a naturally occurring observable phenomena. That's your dependent variable. That's called electrostatics. Everything that exists is electrostatic. We can actually show electrostatic
What-
levitation. Brian,
did you-
Brian, you can't. Please don't make me
Well,
mute you, man. I'm
okay.
gonna lay this out because this is 4 years in the making, 3 years in the making, where you've got to run around victory lapping with straw mans, and I'm tired of hearing it. That's why you're on here. Okay.
Well,
So
I'm
we
tired
have
of
naturally
telling you.
occurring, Brian, we have naturally occurring phenomena that happens. We have bumblebees, we have spider ballooning, we have
Okay, spider
beetles doing this. So they can actually levitate. Now, this is the point, though.
No, I'll get to that now.
Naturally occurring phenomena is electrostatics. Everything that exists is electrostatic. Dude, QE is the one that sent me the citation to support my point. Okay, and it's all molecular and intermolecular attractive forces are electrostatic in nature, Purdue University, and I don't need to appeal to them because it's just objective and you can test it. And there's nothing, including insulators, rubber, glass, you name it, they're all electrostatic. Now we want to test a hypothesis. The hypothesis is that the electrostatics of an object will determine its directionality, whether or not it goes up or down. So what we're going to do is we're going to take an object and we're going to manipulate that independent variable of electrostatics. It doesn't matter if we use a Van de Graaff to do it or not, because that's a man-made device to manipulate the IV. But what we needed was a naturally occurring phenomenon. We have one, electrostatics.
You said that it would take ridiculous amount of electric charge, is it, to levitate me?
Yeah, because you weigh so much.
Right. Well, so where is this ridiculous charge that's keeping me down then?
Well, it's not that it keeps you down. That's a good question.
Well, that's the end of it then.
No,
You just destroyed it.
No, you literally didn't. You're so lost.
No,
So
me,
what
you.
you have to do is straw man me as if I don't get to also acknowledge density, which is very ridiculous.
You're making a claim concerning You're making a claim, and you're claiming that everything is electrostatic, right?
Objectively.
Right. And you said that to levitate me would take a ridiculous amount of charge for this to happen, right? But yes, right. So why am I not levitating then? That would mean that the same amount of charge is keeping me down. But you said the charge that would be needed would kill me, but yet I'm still alive.
All right, listen. So, to make you go up, because you would have to be fighting your density. Now, what you guys want to do is yeah, you don't just get density by yourself. And by the way, you don't even refute anything to do with the globe whenever you do your little demonstration with the egg, because they also acknowledge density. So what's stop interrupting so much? The point is that density.
No, you're wrong,
dude. You're scared to hear me lay it out. I also listen. I acknowledge that one of the primary causes of things going up and down is density disequilibrium. Okay, that's one of the variables. Another one is electrostatics. It sets the bias. We have electric gradient on the Earth. We can make things go up and down with electrostatics, and everything that exists is electrostatic, which means anytime anything falls, we have to acknowledge both the density relationship between the object and its medium and electrostatics. They're both provably a variable. Provably, you can manipulate them and make things go up and down in both scenarios.
Yeah, but you've got to prove that the reason that I'm not going up is due to electrostatics.
It's not just electrostatics, it's also your density.
Yeah,
what you don't understand is you want to try to separate the two.
Well,
it's very ignorant.
Like, I mean, for a start, you haven't proven this claim, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, no, you haven't. Number two.
Do I need to pull it up and show the audience?
What, the Van de Graaff generator?
It makes things float, doesn't it?
You think I have? I'm sure. You think I didn't see that? I mean, we were talking about it a few minutes
You
ago.
just want to ignore it.
No, it's not. It's not. You need that generator to create the effect. So
Non
that's not
sequitur.
the natural world. I don't see iron filings in hair going up the way in the natural world. I don't
Are
see
you
that.
saying that not everything's electrostatic?
I'm not saying everything is or is not. You're making that claim, not me.
Okay, we can prove it.
You can prove that I'm electrostatic.
You don't think you're
electricity on the wall.
You want me to prove it? Yeah. If I put electrostatics on you, your hair would stick up.
What I need you to do is,
oh my God.
Is prove the claim that electrostatics is a variable in why things go up or down.
Okay, we can. Once we manipulate look, I can take a balloon and rub it on my head and I can stick it to the wall.
Yeah. So what?
Thanks for playing.
That has nothing to do with whether my phone is going to go up or down.
I can make things levitate with electrostatics, bro. It's just objective. Bumblebees
Well,
do it. That's naturally occurring. Beetles do it. Naturally occurring. Spider ballooning.
no,
Naturally
hang on.
occurring.
Bumblebees, they don't know. Bumblebees, right? Right. Bumblebees, I don't know what the claim is about them, right? Aerodynamically, they're supposedly a bit strange.
They can't
The
fly
spider
aerodynamically.
ballooning thing, the spider ballooning thing, right? That when you read into that, it's not even only electrostatics that they're even claiming is the reason they're doing it, and it only works for those spiders. For that, hang on, it only works for the spiders that are up to adolescence of that spider.
Non sequitur.
Right? It doesn't work, but it isn't a non sequitur, because if the spider grows beyond adolescence, they can't do it. That means it's such a small thing. How is it a variable?
Okay, so you're just you're clear. Now you're appealing to the age of the spider, but here's the
I'm
problem.
not
Also,
appealing to it.
I'm just going to keep it productive, man.
I'm pointing out something that you obviously are overlooking.
No, the fact you said it doesn't happen when they get older doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all.
Because it's claimed that they're too big, they're too heavy.
Okay, thanks for making my point. So electrostatics is weak, right? And so when something's too dense, it can't make it go up. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't affect it at all. That's an ignorant claim. And secondly, you can't even claim density. Ryan, listen to this part right here. It's going to destroy your whole argument. Listen, this one sentence. You can't even claim density at all without acknowledging electrostatics, because all matter is held together by electrostatics.
How did you validate that?
We can test every material that exists, and it can transfer electrostatic charge, and the
How
molecules themselves.
How did you validate it though? Because you said that.
Yeah, I can. Everything I've ever tested is electrostatic. Can you find any exception?
What? So you said that all matter is held together by electrostatics. So every part of my body is held together by electrostatics.
All molecular and intermolecular attractive forces are electrostatic in nature. That's right. Can you define density? Can you define density for us?
Innate matter.
No, compactness.
Innate matter within a volume.
Compactness of matter, right?
Well, the amount of innate matter within a volume. You know, the amount of it within the volume. You know?
Yeah, compactness of matter. So that's electrostatic. So in order to even have density, you have to have the molecules held together to have a certain compactness, right?
But how have you validated that the reason that it compacts, that matter can compact or whatever, matter is together, is due to electrostatics? This is just a wild claim. You haven't validated this.
We can literally isolate charge in all matter.
I don't mind if that is true. I'm not going against the truth. But what I am going against is claims that are not validated.
Let's move back over to the ether, because this is the point. Like even QE disagrees with you guys on that, and that's why he never jumped in. I think it's super funny. He sent me the citation, but I don't care. Look, I laid it out, okay? I laid it out. Whenever you claim that the sole causal agent, now when I back you into corners, normally they say, we're not claiming that's the only cause. You just said it is the only cause. That's what Sleeping Warrior's claiming. That's what Nathan Oakley's claiming. It has been objectively, intellectually eviscerated. You can deny it if you want to. I laid it out. Everything that is, all matter that exists is electrostatic. We can manipulate that variable to make things go up and down. Now you're just saying, we don't find Van der Graafs in the nature. Okay, you lost. Now we can go back to the ether, though. Let's go back to the ether, because that's what this is about.
We'll go back in a second. So you're claiming that electrostatics are part of the reason why things go up or down, right? That means they're adding, right? So that means there must be some electrostatic effect on everything, being the reason why it goes up or down. There has to be, in accordance with your claim.
Wait, say again?
You're claiming that electrostatics are integral to the vector directionality of matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know why?
Go on.
Because all matter is electrostatic. So whether it goes up,
you haven't validated your claim. This is the problem. See, this is where the disconnect is between us and ye. You keep making the claim, right? And this is going on for a good while now, because we even debated about this the last time, that electrostatics cause this. Great. Show how they cause it.
Go argue with QE about it. I don't want to argue it anymore. Look, what I'm saying is objective. Now listen carefully. You can prove that all matter has a charge. All of it. Now, if you want to keep denying that, go for it. I asked you, okay, look, I'm making a huge claim. I'm claiming that all matter, all you have to do is invoke one single thing in all of existence that is matter that doesn't have a charge, and then you refute my point. All you have to do is bring up one thing. Now, I've tried to go find those things. Rubber, glass, insulators, they're all electrostatic.
That's a reverse of the burden of proof. You're the one making the claim, so it's not up to me It's not up to me to disprove the claim you're making.
Okay, I prove it by showing you all matter. So this debit card right here is matter. This is matter. Rubber is electrostatic. Also, glass, electrostatic. You can prove it. You can prove it. It has a charge. You can prove it. So why are you arguing it? It doesn't even make any sense. That's why I want to
Because
get
you're
back
making
over
a
to the other
claim that it's
conversation. This is you
connected to
objectively
the-
lost, Brian. It's objective.
So you're making a claim that it's connected to the vector directionality of matter.
Because we can manipulate that and then change its vector.
But you can't. You can put something into a Van de Graaff generator, which is outside the natural world.
So you're saying we can't do any
That's what-
experiments
it's
with
an
man-made
outside-
devices?
It's not. That's not what I'm saying. Right? You don't have a natural phenomenon. You have iron foilings and hairs in a Van de Graaff generator, and when you turn it on and you mess with it, it causes them to levitate a bit. But in reality, we don't see that.
Yeah, we
We're not
do.
seeing
I
that.
just now
So
gave you
there's no
specific,
natural phenomenon to observe.
I just gave you specific examples of naturally occurring observable phenomena with
We
bumblebees,
talked
with
about spider
beetles.
ballooning, and I pointed out that only works for, and that it's even claimed they're not even really using a whole lot of electrostatics. The
That is
spider ballooning
object.
thing.
You're just
And it only
saying
works
things.
up to adolescents. They get too big, and they're a tiny little spider anyway.
It's a non sequitur. They took
It's
them
not a
inside,
non
outside of
sequitur.
the wind. First they thought it was
It's not a
wind.
non sequitur because it's
Brian,
important.
you're interrupting a lot, man. Like they took them outside of the wind, and then they showed that they still do it without the wind. They do it with
Great.
electrostatic
Well,
charge
yeah,
because
it
then they
works
increased
only
the
at adolescents.
electrostatic charge and they began to do it more effectively.
Yeah,
Okay.
but when they get older, just they can't do it.
That is a non sequitur. The fact is that it can
No.
physically happen in the natural world, naturally occurring. It doesn't matter if they get too
Yeah, but
big and can't do it
you're
anymore. The fact is that
connecting-
they
you're
do
connecting-
it.
You're connecting these adolescent spiders, right, and what they can do, right, individually, with the reason my phone falls down. That's a massive leap.
Well, it's actually
crazy leap.
it's not an either or discussion. So the density of your phone is more dense than the medium that it's in. So density
Yeah, it's
disequilibrium is a
4%.
primary factor as well as electrostatics because the air, the ground, and the phone are all electrostatics. You can manipulate the variable electrostatics and make things go up or down or to the side and stick to the wall. Objectively, everything that falls down is electrostatic acceleration because all matter is electrostatic.
Okay.
All molecular and intermolecular attractive force are electrostatic in nature. Purdue University.
You're
Like I said,
chanting
if
now.
you disagree with your own leader,
you're
QE,
chanting.
then go argue
So-
with him. I don't.
So you're chanting now. So see my phone, right? To make that go up, you would have to invoke an unnatural situation. In the medium of air, to make that go up the way, you'd have to invoke an unnatural situation.
Hey, is air electric? Is air
Sorry?
electrostatic? Is air electrostatic?
I don't know. I'm not making any claims about air.
Okay, so you're
It
making
doesn't matter.
claims, but you
The point
don't
is
even
that
know.
You're changing. I said something to you and you didn't acknowledge it. I'll say it again. To make my phone go up in the medium of air, you've got to invoke an unnatural situation.
Yeah, so your claim therefore is that you can't do any type of science if you have to use a man-made device. Well,
That's
I'm going
not
to
what
come
I'm
up
saying. I
over
didn't say
here
that.
past
I didn't say
ridiculous.
that. Straw man.
That is what you're saying.
Didn't say it.
Okay, so everyone heard what's going on. We can move on because this is you're just subjectively lost. And I guess
No,
the point is
didn't.
you're
I
trying to
won.
say that it's an unnatural situation, right? I guess I'm
Doesn't mean you
trying to
have
stillman
invoke
your
an
argument.
unnatural situation.
Brian, you're interrupting a lot, man. Like
I
I
don't
don't
have to
interrupt you
invoke
like
anything.
that. So, like to stillman your argument, I think what you're saying is that well, you have to have a Van de Graaff generator. That's not a natural environment. You have to create an environment that's not natural. That is not true though, because we can measure the charge of the surface of the Earth. So the whole Earth's surface has a charge. We can measure the charge of air, so it has a charge. So the natural environment is literally like a Van de Graaff generator. All that does is create a closed environment so we can manipulate it more effectively because electrostatics is so weak. It just creates the bias. Everything's intrinsically electrostatic. And the primary causal agent is density disequilibrium. But technically primary is the fact you can't have density without electrostatics. They're both at play. If you don't acknowledge both of them, you have not adequately acknowledged the phenomenon. So we can get back to the ether though, because I don't want to debate
No,
electrostatics.
you're
I think it's really, really
no.
stupid you
You're
guys
not
are still
making
thinking
claims
that.
there, right? That I have heard this claim before, and I asked you about this when we debated, right? Right.
man.
Now, the Earth obviously has electricity, right, and some kind of electric charge, right? You're going to have electric charge running through the Earth somehow, right? You're going to have that, right? You're going to have electricity in the air, right? You
Okay.
can't see it. You're going to have it, right?
Yeah,
But
you're supporting
what
my
is your
point, or
specific claims about these two things,
all the claim I'm making is that it's there.
right? Whoop-de-doo.
Okay, thanks for playing. Well, we know what that does.
What has that got to do with my phone falling down?
Well, when we manipulate
Nothing.
electrostatics, we can make things go up or down.
Yeah, within an unnatural environment.
It even happens naturally. We talked about this.
Foilings go up the way without a Van de Graaff generator.
All right, I'm gonna say that we have to move on and making an executive decision. I'm not saying I'm not doing that. No, it's just becoming circular. It's been years. I decided to ignore you guys because if you guys don't understand it and you think that your little egg was
That's an
salt
ad hom.
water, I mean,
That's an ad hom.
no.
An
I've
ad hom
presented my
statement,
argument
I
5
don't
times. My argument
understand.
is not the ad hom. I genuinely think that you guys are choosing not to understand it because of pride and ego, because you've said that
No,
there's
I
nothing
don't
but
deny electrostatic electricity or electrostatics, electricity, magnetism, electromagnetism. I don't deny any of those things.
Okay, can we go back to the ether? Because I don't want this
Yeah.
to devolve into a circular, boring. Like this isn't like FED. My time is precious on here. I don't just
my
sit
time
here
is
for
precious
4
too.
hours saying the same thing. So
Yeah, my time is precious too.
I agree. That's why I appreciate you coming on here. But I don't like to fill my audience with like the same exact thing going on over and over. So we
Yeah,
can disagree. I think
we
everyone
don't
heard
have
both
finished.
persons.
Okay, we go
I
back
think
to
everyone got to hear both sides of the argument with electrostatics. Everyone can make up their own decision. Okay, so we can go back. I was only bringing that up because it's like you got to account for all variables. Sometimes not all variables are accounted for. So you can claim there's a cause and effect relationship, and science proves that. You can never claim that you know for 100% fact that that is the only cause of an effect, and that's what Jaron was trying to say. But you guys strawman him, and I heard you guys today taking your victory lap with the strawman. So
No,
we can
hang
move
on,
on to the
hang on, no, because you keep on wanting to move the ether, and I go okay, and then you just make a few claims and want me to just forget about it. No, right? For a start, right, right. What Jaron said was wrong. He was wrong in the story.
I just
He was
explained what
wrong.
he
But
said, and
what's
he was
happening
right.
is you're making several claims, then you're moving off, and I don't get a chance to address all the claims.
I've
That's
been letting
called
you talk the
scattergun.
whole time, Brian. You've been interrupting me the whole time.
Well, I have to say, when I sit there and say nothing, you just keep talking.
That's not
If you
true,
don't
man.
say it, you're not going to give me a chance to say it. And
Hey,
you've strawman me several times.
is the double slit in nature?
The double slit in nature. The fraction is in nature.
Okay,
Anyway,
so is the double slit?
Hang on. Did I claim anything about the double slit?
Yeah,
Or
your channel that you're defending right now.
Is this ether belief or ether debate?
Yeah, that's right. Well,
Yeah.
again,
So right. So
you understand that I said that ether's not science, right?
Aaron was wrong, right? We prove things, right? Things are proven, not we, but things are proven with scientific method. And things are
I
also
just
disproven.
said
But they're both proven. That proven is
you
proven.
just have a script, Brian, because
Hang on,
I just
1 second, right? You prove you're null or you're positive. You're positive or you're null. You're always proving something. So when he said science doesn't prove things, that's incorrect. He's wrong.
Okay. So see if you don't interrupt me, please. Because the only reason I was interrupting you because it's getting very circular, Brian. Okay. I just said that I'm in the middle and I tried to bridge the gap. And I said that what Jaron said has to be a little bit specified. Now on the show, we did specify, which is this. Yes, you can prove a cause and effect relationship test or a null hypothesis. You can verify it or falsify it. That is accurate. That is very valuable, and that's what science does. Science can verify or falsify a hypothesis. It can prove a null hypothesis, however you want to say it, which means falsify a positive hypothesis. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. But you cannot then extend the establishment of that cause and effect relationship to definitive proof that that is 100% the sole, meaning the only causal agent, because there could always be variables that were unaccounted for. I brought up the egg only to explain electrostatics wasn't accounted for. Okay,
Sure,
so
it didn't need
it's
to be
very
accounted
simple.
for. Even in my debate with you, right? You even said it was negligible, which means that it's not even part of anything. The hypothesis was if Anthony, right, or whoever, right, if they manipulate the density of the medium, that it will cause the movement of the matter in a different direction. So you manipulate the density of the water, and the egg goes up. That was the hypothesis. And
I know.
Yeah. So
okay, let's move on. I think the audience got to hear it.
Hypothesis.
The audience got to hear it, man.
Yeah.
So
electrostatics weren't part of that hypothesis. If you have a hypothesis that involves putting that egg into water or into air or whatever, and you then can make the egg go up without changing the density of the medium, then I'm mad to see this. Let's see it.
When we do it, you say, "Oh, you had to use a Van de Graaff generator."
But never mind about you, right? You take the egg, right? Put it into air, put it into water, whatever, and you make it go up without a Van de Graaff generator.
Okay, now we're gonna move on. The audience has got to hear. If you think you won, that's cool. Okay.
It's not about me winning or my ego or any other nonsense like that. It's
I
about
just think you're
what's
wrong, Brian.
true and what's false.
You're just dismissing naturally occurring observable phenomena, frantically trying to defend what
I
you think
don't
is true. I
dismiss
would rather
anything.
just move along.
I didn't dismiss electrostatics. I
Brian,
didn't
for me,
dismiss-
now the option is
I
either we move along or I'm
I
gonna have
didn't
to wrap it up.
dismiss. Hang on.
I don't.
You're making claims that I'm dismissing things. You keep on straw manning me.
Oh my
Why
gosh.
do you need to do that?
I didn't know you were just saying that.
You
At a
said
certain age they
you're
don't do
dismissing
it,
blah,
and
blah, blah. I didn't dismiss anything.
you said at a certain age they don't do it, and they're not even sure if it's that much electrostatics.
Yeah, I said that. Yeah, I said that because that's
Terrible
true.
argument. Okay, so
That's
the
the
plane
truth.
engineers at MIT
the truth.
created flies using electrostatics. It operates in the natural world. F.E. Gemini, thank you for the $4.99 super chat.
You're talking about planes.
Okay, well,
Plane. The
I'm
electrostatic
reading my
plane.
super chat. Hey, all right, so here's the deal.
Oh,
No one's claiming that ether is science, Brian. I tried to tell you this at the beginning. So as in, it's not
I didn't-
scientifically verifiable, as you can't physically manipulate the ether itself, just like we can't physically manipulate the creator. Okay, it's a logical axiom that something is sustaining the energy. Now,
Is this-
now where
is
it's
you or
boiled
is this
down to a
about?
conversation about light.
Is this
FED
you or
has
is this
boiled it
about?
down to a conversation about light, and they're oh my god, they boiled it down about a conversation about light, and FED has chosen to make
yeah,
a claim that light is a photon, and it's been in the freaking description of the channel for 5 years.
Yeah.
You guys are being hypocrites, claiming the double slits in
Yeah.
experiment, invoking a mainstream Morgan
Jason,
Freeman
it's very
video.
bold, all that
That's
kind of
called hypocrisy. Then you're
Yeah.
going around telling other people they can't talk about it. Then you're playing
stuff.
the
I'm telling
victim.
you can't talk about that, and that's a complete load of rubbish. No one ever said you can't do anything. How could we say that about someone else? No,
They said
that's
it's an
a load of
embarrassment to
rubbish.
flat Earth, and we're going to
If
go
you're-
around and
yeah,
take their
because you're
scalps.
making claims about a medium that is outside of our 3D reality, and you're saying it causes things. That's the
Okay.
problem.
Now you don't want to. You don't agree with the claim. That's cool.
From earlier. If you're going to claim something that's outside our 3D reality is causing something, then you may as well just say God, because at that point it's not ether, it's God, isn't it? Not ether. Ether is not the cause. God's the cause.
All right, but you know what's really funny, right? Is like when I go on your guys' show, I'm not allowed to ever talk, and I'm trying my best to let you completely talk and not mute you. I get muted constantly, and I try to not interrupt people at all. And I got Bunny muted the whole time. I'm trying to be respectful, okay? But you're being very impulsive and you're interrupting. It's because it's very clear I'm laying out coherent points.
No, because you're strawmanning me, and you're using tactics that involve sometimes reversing the burden of proof, strawmanning, saying things that aren't true. You know, what you're going to get a reaction.
Can you prove the physical container of the Earth?
You're going to get a reaction off of someone if they know what you're doing.
Can you prove the physical container of the Earth with science?
Can I prove with science? Can I prove the physical container of the Earth? I can only show that it has to be. It's an antecedent. That's what I.
So
can show.
it's a logical argument.
It is a logical argument, yes.
So it's logical antecedent. You can't scientifically prove it.
I can't go and touch it at present. No.
Can
you?
We can't verify it in 3D
Can you?
reality.
Can you do that? No, you can't.
So we can't verify it in 3D reality.
I can't verify what it is. I can't verify where it is, but I can show that it's an antecedent to us having gas pressure.
Well, there's something containing the gas pressure. Yeah, I mean, it could be electromagnetic barrier between fluid-like medium.
Demonstratable then.
There's all kinds of
I don't
things.
know what it is, but if it can't be demonstrated, the only thing I've ever seen demonstrated to contain gas pressure and create gas pressure is a solid container.
You understand the point, though, which is that it's logic and it's not actually science. Now, here's what I want everyone to understand, though. In the description of FED's videos,
yeah, but you
don't want me to say it because you know I'm going to expose them. But you know that after you get off the show, I'll say it. So.
I didn't claim. See, there you go again. That's a straw man. I didn't say anything about the container being science. I said it's an antecedent. Which
I didn't strawman you, Brian. I was just making a point that we could still circle back around to an agreement. I was bringing it up to make a point that we could still circle back around to an agreement, which is that some things can be demonstrated to be true without science. It can just be logic because we cannot get our hands on everything and physically manipulate it. That's the only point of it being brought up. I'm not trying to strawman you and say that you claimed it was science. I was literally trying to bridge the gap. Now, this is the point I'm going to make, Brian. Please do not interrupt this because I know you're trying to gatekeep for it.
I'm not trying to see. There you go again, right? There you go again. I'm not trying to do anything. The reason I came in here, right, was to find out what the hell ether is supposed to be.
Okay.
And I still haven't found out, right?
Yeah. Right, because all you're going to say is no.
Anybody or anything. right? You came on to Nathan's, you said you didn't get heard, right? So I offered a debate with you, so you now are tonight getting heard.
Okay.
Right?
So
how am I gatekeeping for anybody?
I'm saying every time I start to explain the hypocrisy of the
Because
show, you interrupt me.
You make little statements that's going to get a reaction. So stop being antagonizing, and you will be able to get to say what you want to say. Because it seems to me at the moment, all you're trying to do is antagonize the situation.
Oh, okay.
Well,
So
I don't care.
I'm
You
going
can
to
say no,
elucidate.
yes, otherwise, it wouldn't be what it is.
I'm going to elucidate the hypocrisy of the show.
So
So in the description of the show,
the flat Earth debate, or is this the ether debate?
I'm going to elucidate what I want to. Okay. So this is the point: is that in the description of the show, it has a Morgan Freeman video about them shooting single photons, and that light's a photon, and they talk about the double slit experiment and the quantum eraser experiment, which reifies the photon, presupposes it, and is in no way a scientific experiment. Now, they can talk about that for 5, 6, 7 years. They can talk about it as if it's science, which is the definition of pseudoscience, right? And that's perfectly fine. And then when we start to look at another postulation and we say this isn't science, it's immaterial, it's not quantifiable, it's a logical framework, and we disagree with that pseudoscience over there, we're being told that we're an embarrassment to flat Earth, that there's going to be a war waged upon us, we should be excommunicated from the real community, we're not really flat earthers, and that we're committing the egregious crime of pseudoscience. Okay, now I'm saying that's hypocritical, and that's why I'm asking about light. I'm not trying to be dishonest and divert the conversation away from my claim, because my claim's a logical one, a philosophical one. I have nothing to be worried about. You want me to define the ether, you're going to handwave dismiss it with nuh-uh, but it's the pure potential state of energy. It's the background medium. It's non-manifest. It's a pure potential, a homeostasis of pure potential of energy. That's where it comes from in accordance with the first law. That's my definition. Okay. Now you can say you can't prove it. I said, well, good thing I didn't claim it was science. I claimed that it was logic. I claimed it's a logical axiom. That's the way that I see it. If you disagree, you can disagree. It's a philosophy. My point is that you're going around making claims about the photons and acting like that debunks the ether. That's what FED is doing. They're claiming the photon debunks the ether.
There you are again, making up these strawman arguments to hand your opponent. Go to my videos and find where or anywhere on Nathan's where I went around making the claims you've just said I've made.
Yeah,
so
you claim.
I didn't make them then.
Okay, what you claim is, well, I've already exposed what you've been claiming, which is that ether's the same as relativity. I exposed it. It's objectively not. See what I'm saying? You're still doing it. You're still doing it.
They're both a fourth-dimensional medium for light to propagate through.
You just got exposed for doing it, and now you're still doing it.
They're both the same, describing the same thing.
They're not. Einstein literally says it's not a medium. He literally says you cannot think of space-time as a medium. So how is it the same thing as a medium?
Because they're both because general and special and general relativity, right, speak about light propagating through it. And the ether being part of that.
Non sequitur. Einstein said that. Einstein said the ether. Einstein said it.
Ether would be unthinkable because light couldn't propagate through it.
Einstein said it could not be thought of as a medium.
What did he say? Okay, read it out from the start. Read out the start of it, where he brings in the ether into it. Read that out.
Yeah, he said that space must have physical properties. In this sense, there must exist an ether. In fact, space without ether is unthinkable, for without the physical properties, we would not be able to have our time intervals or our measuring rods and clocks, etc. But this may not be thought of as a medium, and it may not have motion applied to it.
Contradict himself, that's fair enough. He can contradict himself all he wants. The point is that he brings the ether into it. Ether is part of general and special and general relativity.
No, not the ether we're talking about, Brian.
He says that he can't.
You sound ridiculous.
You just gave out his words.
This is why FED will crash and burn. Because you guys have to lie. You have to lie.
I'm not lying. Say it again.
Okay, listen carefully. It's not the same thing. The ether that we're talking about is from electrical field theory. It's a background medium. It was thrown out and replaced by Einstein because of Michelson-Morley. He had to throw out the ether because it debunked heliocentrism. That's the ether we're talking about, the one that's a medium that sustains propagation of electromagnetic energy. We're talking about the medium, the background medium that was thrown out for heliocentrism and replaced by Einstein. He then writes later to give people context. He says, now, in this little nuanced sense, there exists an ether still, even though I've replaced it. And that is just because it has to have physical properties. So you can call it an ether in that sense, but it cannot be thought of as a medium. There's nothing there but space and time. Two concepts. It's emptiness. Okay. He had to replace the ether that we're talking about. So when people go around and say that we are promoting the same thing relativity does, it's literally the opposite of the truth. And ironically, they are supporting the physical photon, the quantum of light, which was the Einstein definition of light and is needed for special relativity and all the claims of the heliocentric model. So it's very ironic. It's very ironic, and it's literally a straw man, and it's really annoying. It's been going on for like a month and a half now.
Yeah, but he does reference the ether. He says the ether. So your version of ether and his version of ether, and let's just say Bob Nodell's version of ether and Ken Wheeler's version of ether, are they all different ethers?
Einstein's ether is different than all the other three people you named. That's right.
And is yours, Bob Nodell's, Ken Wheeler's, are those three ethers the same ether?
You would have to ask them.
Yeah, so that's the problem. There's all these different versions of this thing, and I could have a version. There could be a version for everyone that's in the world. You know why? Because it's in a dimension that we can't physically experience.
Okay, kind of like your photon isn't real.
You can't make claims and tell the world that this is because of that and that's because of the other thing. But you can't.
But you can make claims about photons.
I'm not making claims about photons.
Your show does.
I'm not making claims about photons. You're making claims about ether.
So why don't you critique Nathan Oakley for making claims about photons? And since you're just such a good arbiter of what
I have had arguments about the atomic model on there.
About light? No, because I've heard it. Everyone amps up that light's a physical part.
About the atomic model. I don't talk about light. I don't argue about light.
Okay, now Brian, that's an honest position. If you say we don't know, I don't care, I can't prove it, that's cool, but you should critique them as well. But here's the point, though, man. The point is some of us want to figure it out, bro. Okay.
Yeah,
now I don't listen. To answer your question, yes, Bob's ether, my ether, Ken Wheeler's ether, they're all the same ether on a fundamental level, which is that it's an electromagnetic background. It's a background that sustains electromagnetic energy. Okay. Now we then go trying to figure it out. There's all kinds of different versions to try to explain it. Just like there's 50 versions of the photon, 100 versions of the electron, right? There's all kinds of different versions of stuff. Once you can't prove it, we're trying to figure out the way that it works. That's okay.
Missing
That's
where
how
you're
logic
logically
works.
going wrong. You're calling it a logical framework, but you're missing where you're going wrong. You're starting off with a logical pre-assumption. Why are you starting with a pre-assumption? But you're starting with a pre-assumption. That's the problem. You're pre-assuming that this thing is connected to these other things.
Well, no, I'm not saying.
That's why That's why I asked you. My first question was: are you looking to find the cause of magnetism and electricity, or are you looking to prove the ether? That's why I asked you that question at the start. Because they would be two completely different paths of investigation, would they not?
Yeah. Atomism and ether are different.
No. When I asked you, the very first question I asked you was, are you looking to prove the cause of magnetism and electricity, or are you looking to prove the cause, or are you looking to prove the existence of ether? Because if you're looking to prove the existence of ether, then there's no guarantee that that's going to be the cause, that you're going to find the cause of magnetism and electricity.
Okay, again,
understand where the logic is not working.
Again, you can't physically manipulate or quantify the ether, even if it is 100% true. So if it's there, you still can't quantify it. You still can't scientifically prove it. Just because something's not materially manifest doesn't automatically equate to non-existence. We talked about the creator. We could talk about consciousness. It's called logic. Now we look at the other side that was proposed to us, and it doesn't work. It claims, so just logically, philosophically, it doesn't work. We can't science it. So every single thing you say about science and proving it and the dependent variable and the cause and effect, it's all straw man arguments. I'm saying it's a philosophical determination. It's a framework. Now, one of them actually makes sense and can work. That's the ether. The other one, called atomism and quantum mechanics, doesn't work. It can't explain magnetism. It's not even viable. It doesn't even get close to working. It says virtual photons. It says electrostatics are virtual photons. It says the electron's here, but not really there, but it can be everywhere at the same time. And it does all this other magic, woo-woo pseudoscience, right? But the ether says, oh, that's just different modalities of the background that's everywhere. It actually is viable. I didn't claim it was science. I claimed it's logically viable. It's the only logically viable framework. and that's just objective. And so when you're now making claims about photons, means you have to make claims about electrons. You're being a hypocrite because that
I'm
is
not making claims
pseudoscience.
about photons or electrons. I didn't make claims about them at all.
So what your suggestion is that we just don't acknowledge a
I didn't
majority of the
suggest
phenomena on the
anything.
Earth at all.
I didn't suggest anything.
How-
Any of that I didn't suggest.
So do you encourage us trying to understand
Well, I
magnetism?
tell you what I encourage. I encourage people, right, to try and find the cause of magnetism and electricity. I don't encourage people to make claims about what is the cause of it before they've ever found the cause. I don't encourage that because that's dishonest.
No, what we never said we proved the call. We're saying it's the only logical viable framework. We know by logic
You're promoting
that
it.
there is a metaphysical realm. We know this by logical requirement.
Yeah. When I said to you earlier at the start, I said, as far as from my observations in life, right, to me, from what I can see, everything works off of cycles. So if the reason for magnetism and electricity is a cycle, how would that work with ether?
Yeah, it's actually constantly cycling within the ether and like from the ether, which is the
Because you have to add
unmanifest.
ether, you keep on having to add ether in.
You just asked me how would it work with the ether. So basically, Brian, to summarize it, you don't want to address a lot of the phenomena unless you can put your hands on it and manipulate it.
Well, how do you
It is what you're
know?
saying.
How do you, like your mind reading of some kind?
Define magnetism.
Magnetism. It's
define it.
It's a force of attraction.
Define
and
force.
repellent.
Define force.
A force. Well, it's something that we can observe, something that has power. You want me to define power? Observe?
Yeah, I guess so, since you're just describing what something it does and not what it is. What is magnetism?
Because I don't know what it is. I'm not the one making claims about what causes it.
Okay, I think that's fair enough. What is electrostatics?
What is electrostatics?
Yeah.
It's an effect of electricity and a static charge.
What is electricity? What's electricity?
Sorry, say it again.
What is electricity?
I don't know what electricity is.
Okay, fair enough. That's an honest answer. Now, this is my point, right? Now, these are very elusive phenomena, but they're very prominent. It seems like we may have been misled about them because we all have utility bills. We live in this world where we're controlled with our misunderstanding of the world, and we believe in electrons and photons and physical bouncing balls everywhere that have never been proven, right? Mathematical concepts about balls. That's what they said we lived on, and that's what they said in the sky, and that's what they say is on the subatomic scale that we can't see. They lied to us about little physical balls everywhere, okay? Now, some of us want to try to understand what's really going on. We found out that there was a different explanation for these phenomena, magnetism, electrostatics, and electricity, and they actually make sense. Quantum mechanics doesn't. It says it's virtual photons. So the whole world's being brainwashed with this lie over here, just like the Earth, and it doesn't make any sense. Virtual photons are admittedly not real. They basically say what you say. We don't know. But Nikola Tesla, who gave us an AC induction motor, Charles Proto-Steinmetz, who perfected the AC generator, Oliver Heaviside, these people that were fatherheads of electrical field theory, they claimed they did know. They gave us what we still use, and they said something totally different. So when we went and researched, we found out, why is it that people don't even consider this or talk about it, or we don't even know anything about it? What we discovered was it was thrown out because it's proved if that was there, if what they said about the ether was true and it was there, then it debunked that the Earth was moving definitively. So they had to move away from it and throw it out. And now we have the idea of quantum mechanics, which is pseudoscience by definition. Everything that they claim, the interpretation of all of that is pseudoscience. The photon is pseudoscience. The electron is pseudoscience. And that's just the whole point, bro. We don't want to believe in the nonsense mainstream pseudoscience when the ether's being hidden and taken out because it debunked the heliocentric model. Some of us want to keep learning about it. If you want to say, that's why I try to agree and bridge the gap. Look, we can't scientifically prove it. We can't quantify the ether. We can't physically grab it. So it's just a logical framework. I figured that would bridge the gap, but it didn't. And now people are making claims about photons and electrons. You want to talk about being an embarrassment to flat Earth? You're claiming that light physically travels from point A to point B with a constant speed called a photon, which is defined by Einstein and needed for special relativity and the heliocentric model. That's embarrassing to flat Earth, in my opinion. I wouldn't go tell someone they're not allowed to talk about it, though.
So the thing about light traveling, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at interferometry, right? Yeah. According to Honeywell, I can share it here. According to Honeywell, right, the reason for the interference, the fringe pattern within the ring laser gyro, because they make the ring laser gyros, is that one beam has to travel a further distance than the other. Now, I'm not making claims about whether that's true or not, But they are making a claim. They make them, and they say that's the reason why you have the interference pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, they all believe that light travels.
Yeah.
Because of relativity, bro. They all think they live on a ball in a vacuum, and that gravity is something called relativity. So they consider it proven physics. They don't even contemplate another option. So interferometry is based on the quote unquote speed of light, which is a convention. Of course, they don't have a one-way speed, right? They use a mirror. They get an average of a two-way. It's just a made-up story for relativity, bro. It's not real because it's already there. We have things that show it's instant.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I've gone completely. I've gone against. I've even made videos against the whole two-way speed of light claim and how much rubbish it is. It was complete and utter nonsense, or it is complete and utter nonsense. But I can't speak for everyone else, but I can in this instance. I can't speak for Nathan and all them in this instance. We have no issue with something that's really there and can really be proven. But we do have an issue. I speak for me. I have an issue with something being put forward as a possibility and then gradually becoming an actual proven thing, proven cause, or proven whatever, without ever being proven. I'm interested in what creates magnetism and electricity, how it works.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start by thinking ether. I'm not going to.
Then you'll never understand it, Brian.
I'm not going to start there. I don't care if Tesla started there or if Tesla, because I remember hearing supposedly a quote from him that he spoke about how he was pulling an electric charge or whatever in from the ether.
Yeah.
Right. That was I remember that because I remember looking into him years ago.
You agree Nikola Tesla was obviously very bright, though, right? I'm not appealing to his authority. I'm just saying he's at least worth listening to. And what he actually said was he had to treat the ether as a matter of fact to have scientific success. Now, I'm just explaining because he was smart enough to know you have to have some framework to put one foot in front of the other to start to work. They tricked us, and we don't even have a viable framework. People think that there are negative and positive charges, and things are bouncing around chaotically, but you can't see them. And so they tricked us, bro. Now, if you want to believe that, I don't care, right? But the problem I have with it is when people are attacking other people, and I see what you're saying. I even try to bridge this gap. Some flat earthers don't know much about all this, and they go around talking about the ether like it's scientifically, definitively proven fact, right? And they make all these crazy claims, and I get that. I get that. But look, I don't do that. I don't agree with that. I try to preface it specifically, right? And either way, I'm not their dad, bro. Like, this is the truth community, right? This isn't about flat earth. This is an additional subject that people want to learn about. And that was the problem. That's what created all this beef, was people trying to tell other people they couldn't talk about it and call it pseudoscience whenever I don't even claim it's science. But then they claim the photon, Brian. The photon is stupid. It's pseudoscience, and it's Einstein's definition of light, and it's needed for relativity. And someone says, oh, I see a dot on the screen that proves the photon, and it literally doesn't. Not even within quantum mechanics itself, they'll tell you that could actually be an electron, not a photon, but an electron dot dispersion, which is actually just gaps in the electron field, which the electron field is actually just the dielectric or electrostatic field, if you look at the ether, which is actually more valuable. That's what the people that gave us electricity said. You don't prove the photon without making tons of other claims, and then I know it's not fair to straw man you with other people's claims, so I don't want to do that because I was frustrated when they did that to me and they were all screaming at me about Bob, right? So I don't want to do that to you. But the claiming that you take a picture of the photon and all this nonsense, that is not what happens. You have a plate, you shake up electric-magnetic fields, which is what we call light, and then it interacts with the electrostatics of the plates. Admittedly, but they claim that a photon comes and hits the atom, shoots off an electron, and creates a dot. That's all pseudoscience. So I don't want to believe that, and I don't have to believe that. And we don't think that light's a wave that physically travels from point A to point B because the medium's already there. It's just shaking. If I go to the middle of a lake and I move my arms, I'm not emitting something. I'm just disturbing the water that's already there. So it's two different frameworks. There should be a middle ground here. It should definitely not be some wage war. And now I hear people, I'm sorry, I'll let you talk however long you want to after this, but I now hear people claiming that I took it to their doorstep and forced it upon them. That is a lie, bro. I was asked my opinion and then got berated, dude, and then got insulted. And then people started putting up YouTube shorts about me, right? And so that's what actually happened. And then people are going on Discord, I'm taking scalps. We're waging war on the embarrassment that is the flat earthers that talk about the ether. And then out the other side of their mouth, they're talking about pseudoscience required for relativity in the globe model, which is a hypocritical thing to do. So you can talk as long as you want.
My experience with the term photon on FED was that it was describing something. It was the description of what turns up on the photographic plate. So the reason I personally never, like, I haven't heard them claim that the photon is proven science. I've ever heard it being claimed to be a description, right? Now, the reason I never really looked into light is that for me, I don't know how you can figure out what it is. That's the problem. Like, I don't know how you can figure out what light is. For instance, the claim, right now, this is going to be ignorance on my part, right? The claim that we have a visible and invisible, right, light. So we have what they call visible light, which the word light is just a description, which is like the light behind me, right? The light in what we're seeing. Then we have the claimed invisible, which is radio waves, whatever, right? Now, how did they validate radio waves and, let's say, fire were the same thing? Is fire a radio wave? Now, that might seem ignorant or stupid, but when I light a fire, there's light. How does that and the radio wave, how are them the same?
Well, they may be different modalities of the same thing. What is energy? Ask to define energy. These are interesting conversations that we should have, by the way. But just so you know, like, another thing that was triggering me, bro, was, like you said, we have a non-visible and a visible spectrum of light, right? And so whenever I was on there, you know, and again, I don't want to strawman you, but or what they said or what they did, but it's like, I said, there's light everywhere, right? He's like, oh, so when I turn the light off, when the room is dark, there's light there, and I'm like, yeah. Or he's like, so when I turn the light on, what happens? I'm like, well, there was already light there before you turn the light on. And then I got ridiculed and berated and not allowed to say it. And then when I finally said, what about the non-visible spectrum? No one rebutted me. And then someone else jumped in to straw man me with another argument and change the subject. And we don't have to hyper focus on what happened there that much. But what I'm saying is, no one can refute that. Everywhere in the world has light already. It's everywhere. And so how is it a stretch to say that light is instant or already there if it's literally, there's a spectrum of light we can't see that's literally already everywhere? What if we're just exciting what's there and then it becomes illuminated? Then we don't have a problem with the speed of light. Then all of a sudden, instantaneous action at a distance could make sense. All of a sudden, like, instantaneous light makes sense. So this is the point. Like, this is a deeper conversation than just like, I think it's particle, no wave, you know, oh, pseudoscience. That's not fair, and it's hypocritical, and that's kind of the point.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, I don't know how it's possible, how it would be possible to actually find out what light is. And so consequently, like, when what you said about there always being light, that is true, as in, there's no such thing as total dark, because your eyes will adjust. Your eyes will adjust to, regardless of how dark it is, your eyes will adjust, and you will be able to see in that dark. Your eyes will always adjust. So so the whole description of light, is that more to do with, or partially connected to, our own eyes? How much are our own eyes involved in that?
Yeah. I think our light,
what we see.
Our eyes only see a certain spectrum of the light. I say a certain spectrum of vibration, and yeah, other animals can see a lot more than we can, for example. So there's something there, even though we don't see it. There's X-ray, we have gamma rays, we have radio waves, right? We have all these things that we can't see, but still exist there in the deepest, darkest part of the ocean. There's still light there. In the darkest cave known to man, there's still background radiation. There's still light there. So that's kind of the point, is that there's light everywhere. And when you say we maybe never understand light, well, that's true, because even within our framework, because I think that light is the background, and it just, like, kind of glitches in and out of, like, this material perception. And so it's not really like it's this whole different detached world. If the ether framework is accurate, which is what brought us the very understanding of electricity that we have to this day, was hidden by the elite and the occult to keep us down because of heliocentrism. Like, if that's true, well, then it interacts with the physical world, and that's what we're getting all this stuff from: magnetism, electrostatics, electricity. Now, coincidentally, all these things are unexplained in 2022 by mainstream science. They don't even have a proposed BS explanation for them. I mean, that you
Mhm.
got to admit that's pretty insane. There must be something here. Obviously, we're doing something wrong if they haven't even come up with some explanation about it. Magnetism being virtual photons, right? What's a photon? A virtual reification fallacy? It's like crazy, bro.
A virtual photon would be a virtual description because a photon is just a description. I've never heard it being described any other way. They're on the bomb, but described any other way.
Well, descriptions don't physically travel and hit plates, bro. Right?
Yeah,
So is it?
yeah. Yeah. See, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying is that basically there is always this, right, this entity, if you want to call it an entity, that
Sure.
we call light, we describe
Mhm.
as light. It's always present, and that we excite it, or we invoke it, or whatever, something like that, right? See, the problem is with light, when you get to talking about light, you have no. I don't see any way out of going into philosophy, because
I
I
agree.
don't know what else you're going to do.
I
And
agree.
but when it comes, my issue with the ether is not that whether it exists or not. I'm not against the ether existing. It's that for me, right? Like, and you made a good point earlier. There was a lot of people, and we had a lot of people. Well, not a lot of people, but the kind of usual faces coming onto Nathan's and making claims of definite fact concerning the ether, and they shouldn't be doing that. That's see,
Yeah.
we're skeptical because we just got out of a complete load of rubbish, right? About 8 years ago, people started going, hang on a minute, right? We're just getting out of a load of rubbish, and we don't want to end up going down another road that could be detrimental in the future.
Well, you
So
agree we can all do what we want, right, Brian? I mean,
yeah,
like we're all free
exactly,
people.
I don't disagree with that. So I am all for finding out what the origin of magnetism and electricity is, but I might not ever get for if it's going to get to the point of saying ether, which would be something that's not that, like, unless you change the description of light and call it ether, I don't see how we could ever support it or prove it. Or the point I'm trying to make is, when we get to the point of talking about things outside our 3D reality, then at that point the cause goes straight back to the source, which is God.
Well, I don't entirely disagree with that, by the way. Like I describe energy as pressure mediation, and I think actually a more accurate one would be some type of in intelligence. And so, I mean, like some people aren't ready for that, right? And I get why people want to talk about science. I don't, bro. I like to think deeply. I like to like I realize this place that we live, it's much deeper than we think, and energy and electricity are maybe much deeper than we think. And the creator made the world in such a way where you can't even fully understand it without acknowledging the background, without acknowledging that there's more to it than the matter that you see. I think that's a beautiful thing. Some of us want to talk about it, right? And like that's the point, is like we're allowed to talk. I mean, it can be portrayed like it's good intentions, but basically people have been coming at me like they're about to like throw me off the freaking cliff because you represent me and all this stuff. Like, no, man, I represent me. You know, you're your own person. And we shouldn't go around dictating that, because if Nikola Tesla had jumped in one of those circles right now, they would have ridiculed him and called him stupid. Dude, Nikola Tesla was a genius and came up with the way we use electricity to this day, including the way that your phone works. You wouldn't even have a cell phone without that guy. And then there would be a certain show right now that would ridicule him, right? And call him stupid and ask him to prove it. If he said, "Oh, well, I'm coming up with a new dynamic theory of gravity for electrostatic equilibrium in the luminiferous ether," they'd be like, "You're an idiot." You know, and it's like, we
Oh,
need intelligent people that have woken up to be able to start freely thinking, to start looking at different frameworks, start applying different pieces together and figure out what works together and make progress. That's what we need to do. We need to grow and then overcome the indoctrination, bro. That's what a lot of us are trying to do.
but
Okay.
On Nathan's, like, the thing about it is with Nathan's is that it's all based in the really is level, what we can really prove, and that's what Nathan's is all about. What we can really prove
They
in
claim the
3D
photon, but
reality. Hmm?
then they claim the photon, bro, and the photon requires the claim of the
They don't claim
electron.
it that the photon is not being. It's only used as a description. I mean, it's just a word for describing what's on the plate. That's what it is.
What's on the plate is an electronic interaction. It's an electric interaction with light. That's all it is. So that doesn't prove what light is at all. They are claiming it's a discrete chunk of information called light that goes through the slit and hits the plate like a BB gun. And that's not, for one, it's obviously not true. Okay. But for two, the most important part is it's definitely not proven. It's definitely not science. And it's literally needed for the theory of relativity to exist. It's needed for the heliocentric model to exist. That's why they have all these paradoxes, Brian. That's why quantum has paradox here, paradox here, paradox here, because they're trying to make everything work within relativity and light having a constant speed. And quantum showed them that's not true.
I understand that. I understand that they are holding on to a model. I understand that. The same way as everything geometric always has to add in a globe somehow mathematically. It's the same thing. I understand that, but that doesn't mean that it is completely wrong.
I mean,
if they're to hold on to a model, that doesn't mean that they're completely wrong. Because
what do you think about? Sorry,
well,
what do you think about this, Brian? Like, if say you have an idea, right, and then you have an observation that directly contradicts your idea or your assumption, right?
Mhm.
Would you not agree that the logical thing to do is to throw out your presupposition? You now have observations that can be replicated that directly contradict your presupposition. So we need to throw it out. And they don't do that with relativity because it is unquestionable, which means everything we see light do that doesn't work with a physical particle traveling, they don't throw that idea out. They can't. It's needed for gravity. So then they just reify it and make up stories. Superposition, sentience, transcendence of time, all this crazy stuff. They'll do all this before they question the idea that the Earth's not moving. And that's what they'd have to do to acknowledge a background medium. So, I think that I empathize with people that have been kind of talking about this for a long time. I can see why it would be difficult. I can see why they've kind of, buried themselves in talking about quantum mechanics or the quantum eraser demonstration or whatever, right? I can empathize with that. But this has only come about because of things outside of my control as I would see it. But we don't even have to keep talking about the drama. I mean, from a fundamental part is I see what you're saying. You can't physically, scientifically prove it. And what's the point in talking about it? My rebuttal is, well, if it's true, it's immaterial. It couldn't be quantified or science, period. We can only hope to find different ways. Some can argue, well, we've measured characteristics of what happens within the ether, like a drift. People say rigidity in space. That's non sequitur. We see the light drift on the Earth a certain direction. We do see pendulums move in a certain direction. We do see the gyroscope move in a certain direction. We do see these things. Now, what they claim about them is fake. Correlation doesn't equal causation. They claim that all this different stuff about the pendulum, and it's not real. But we do have effects on the Earth that seemingly could be affected by some type of drift over top of us, and we see the sky move, and maybe some of us want to kind of philosophically put it together. So that's okay, bro.
But for a start, I'm going to go on to the drifting now. For a start, I have no issue whatsoever with anyone talking about whatever they want to talk about and thinking about philosophizing about whatever or investigating whatever. My issue is that I'm not going to start with a pre-assumption of ether. I don't care if Nikola Tesla, unless God tells me, right, I'm not going to start with that pre-assumption. So it's not saying that it's not saying that what it's describing is not there or it doesn't have any relevance. It's that I haven't gotten to the point. If I'm going to want to find out what is the cause of this thing, then I can't start off pre-assuming something else because that's going to skew my investigation. That's how I would view that. And as far as the drift goes, see this drift thing is the ring laser gyroscope, right, in the airplane that's sitting on the tarmac, is that registering a drift?
Wait, say it again.
The ring laser gyroscope that's in the airplane, right, that's sitting on the tarmac, hasn't taken off, sitting still, is that ring laser gyroscope registering a drift?
They use ring laser or mechanical gyroscopes?
Well, they use ring lasers on the commercial airliners.
Yeah, so that what they do is they actually calibrate it with the plane itself, and then they have things that calibrated to fix it, to keep it within a certain window so that it doesn't alter. That's what they do in a commercial plane. If we use a gyroscope, a ring laser gyroscope on the surface of the Earth, the laser patterns show that there's some type of drift happening relative to where you are in the Earth. It's an interesting effect. They claim that it proves that the Earth spins. It definitely does not do that. So the
So,
question is, well, what's going on? Well, it's the person that discovered it, called the Sagnac effect, said it was a vortex in the ether, and that's what they used to make ring laser gyros. Sagnac effect. Rigidity in space is a non sequitur because airplanes literally use calibration relative to the plane itself to keep it from moving too much. That's
the
not the same at all.
ring laser gyro is like the main gyro within the airplane. That is like the benchmark.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that
Yeah.
can't be drifting, otherwise it's of no use. They need it to be. It needs to not be drifting. Otherwise, it
Again,
can't be used.
you know that they have a certain calibration method in a plane.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay, so what are they having to constantly correct for? If it just
But what are
automatically,
they?
magically maintains its rigidity in space, then why is it constantly correcting?
I know that they have to have it on for a certain length of time before they can use it, because it will register a drift. In the gyro compass, right, where they have not the mechanical ones, but the ones where they use the fiber optic gyros, in those, I know that the fiber optic gyro has to be on for like half an hour to 45 minutes before they can use it. Because
Right.
if it's not, it will cause deviations.
Right, and it syncs with that
It
drift,
has to get
and
to
then
certain RPMs or whatever.
it syncs with the drift, and then they have it calibrated with the plane so that they can then maintain it, and they still have to correct it beyond that. But anyway,
But
I don't want to get. All I'm trying to say is there is phenomena that does actually show us there's something going on, and we know based on logical axiom there's a metaphysical realm. We know that, like, okay, for example, consciousness, I can't bottle it up or anything. Now, materialist atheists will tell you that it's just neural passages in your brain. That's stupid, dude. Consciousness is beyond us, but we experience it in the physical world. There's something going on where there's a metaphysical interaction with the physical. In fact, the material world couldn't be made without that. So that's our first logical step. Now we're like, okay, well, what's going on with these things that materialism and quote unquote science as of today can't explain, like magnetism and electricity? Is it possible that's another one of those things that interacts from the metaphysical? And it seems that is the case, bro. And the people that understood it the best, that gave you this computer and your phone and everything that we have, said so. So anyway, that's kind of the point. It's like a logical philosophical framework that's actually viable. Materialism, atomism is not viable. It's stupid. It contradicts itself. It requires tons of pseudoscience claims. We were all brainwashed and indoctrinated with that belief, and it is not true and has no evidence. And anyone that's honest would, instead of just saying, okay, maybe this is a bridge the gap. Basically, what you guys have decided to do is we don't want to make any claims whatsoever. And so if we can't scientifically prove it, we don't want to make the claim. That's what got us in this trouble. Was they came up with the globe model. They claimed a bunch of stuff that was science, but it was actually pseudoscience and theories and reification fallacies and math, reified and concepts. And they taught it to us like it was science, but it wasn't. And they tricked everyone because everyone believes stuff was science that actually wasn't. So we need to narrow it down to what we can prove definitively so we don't get tricked again. And I understand that. I get what you're saying. I see the value in that. It's definitely valuable to distinguish what can be scientifically proven and what cannot. I think there's value in that. At the same time, we don't need to remain stagnant. If we can only do that, we can't acknowledge majority of what happens in the world. We can't acknowledge anything. We can't acknowledge a pendulum or the gyro, but more so we can acknowledge magnetism or electricity or electrostatics. So like some of us have chosen not to do that. It's everyone's personal prerogative. If we want to go beyond that, then we do, right? And I'm like, that's why on my whole tour, I defined science for the whole country, Brian. I told the whole country, every city I went to, I defined science, I defined pseudoscience. And then when they came and asked me about the ether or certain questions, I'd be like, well, falsification is independent of replacement. But my opinion is, and I would tell them what I think about the ether. And I think that's what people should do if they want to talk about it. But that's all. All I can do is, we're not everyone's dad. We're not gatekeepers. I think that we need to keep growing. Some of us want to keep growing, and we don't want to let them lying to us backfire on us where we stay confined and never grow, bro. And that's kind of what it feels like. People are becoming stagnant. You may be surprised the more you look into it.
Well, I agree on Nathan's. It's very specific and very rigid, right? And that is what we, I suppose, we pride ourselves on, is the rigidity, right? That it's narrow and it's rigid. Now, we do speculate. I'm not saying we don't speculate, but if it comes down to proving something or claims, it doesn't always have to be like not everything is science, but that doesn't mean it's not correct. You know what I mean? We don't claim that everything has to be proven through a scientific method, because that wouldn't be correct, right?
Mhm.
It's only when things are claimed to be science, right? As you know. But like things like the drift, what you've talked about, like that straight away would be a red flag for us. Like, because the drift, I have no evidence of the drift. In the mechanical gyroscope that they used in the gyrocompass, when that's not spun up to its correct RPMs, that'll drift. And the direction it drifts depends on the motor and the direction of its spin. So there's a drift that happens due to RPMs not being correct. Like the drift of a pendulum, behind me there's a pendulum hanging there. I know it shouldn't be up there, but it is. There's a pendulum hanging behind me. It's a boxing bag hanging behind me. That doesn't drift around.
Of course not, because the Earth's not moving. But if you do start a pendulum, it does start to move. And a bunch of buried evidence of the Elias effect during an eclipse happens. And if you do move it, it precesses relative to where you are in the world. That's an interesting effect. It's not because the Earth's moving. That's pseudoscience. That doesn't mean, like, if the sky's moving around us, there would be a centrifugal translation of motion if there was a medium connecting. The point is that a lot of this is much deeper in, like, higher level intellectual discussion. It's far, far from embarrassment or whatever. And I'm pretty sure that planes, like, utilize mechanical gyros as well. And, like, like I said, they calibrate it. There is a drift. If I have a ring laser and I go take it on the Earth, I can detect a drift. And so,
yeah, well, they do.
It's interesting.
Yeah, they do have. They have, is it two or one horizontal or two horizontal and one vertical mechanical gyros, as well as the ring laser on the plane.
That's right.
The thing with the pendulums, like, if you go to the Los Angeles Observatory, the Griffith Observatory, sorry, my memory was right, Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, they have a pendulum doing what it's claimed that it does, this effect. But they have to induce this with an electromagnetic motor. In places where they don't have the electromagnetic motor, they have to have somebody who's in charge of it, and they have to induce it. If it starts going the wrong way than it's supposed to go for what they want it to do, they have to correct it. So that, like, I can't call that a legitimate effect.
All right. Yeah, like I said, like this, and it's interesting, and it'd be a long conversation. I mean, there is a drift, but it's like the Saganek effect, long time known, but we could talk about it at other point. I guess, anyway, what it fundamentally comes down to, and what you've done, and so I've let it go, is that you said, well, I'm not making claims about the photon. I'm not making claims about light, and they say it's just a description, and that you're not making claims. And so fair enough, but that show is making claims, right? And, like, how could, if it's a photon, is it instantaneous? And I've been asking, does a double slit go through both does a single photon go through two slits that simultaneously collide with itself? That's hyperbole, because that's what they claim in quantum to make their math work, right? Which is superposition. And so it's just hyperbole, because it's showing that how could you get that pattern as the photons add up if it's just a single photon? Oh, the photon's sentient and knows to go in each different way to make it look like a wave or whatever. The truth is that it's already there. It doesn't go through the slit. It's just an electric oscillation, a magnetic oscillation. They intersect. It's an event of intersection, and that's what they call the photon. It's not an individual thing, and that's why they say it has no charge or it has no magnetic properties. It isn't affected by electricity and all this stuff. Well, actually, you can't have light without electricity, right? And so it's like they're claiming something's there that isn't there. Anyway, it's a long story short is, like, people need to watch out for making claims that are actual pseudoscience and then screaming at everyone else about pseudoscience. I'm not claiming pseudoscience because I'm not claiming the ether science, bro. So that's it. And if I want to speculate cause and effect relationships, but I know I can't scientifically prove it or quantify it because it's immaterial intrinsically, that's okay. And at least mine's viable and makes sense. At least mine doesn't come from Einstein, where Einstein defined the quantum definition of light. That's literally where it came from, Einstein. And then special relativity attributed a constant speed to light, right? And then general relativity is built upon special relativity's constant speed of light. Yeah. So all that said,
Einstein's convention, they call it.
Yeah.
It's 671 million miles per hour.
It's stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid. I looked into I've gone through all the supposed speed of light claims, and it all actually comes back to the radius of the globe. That's where it all starts with.
Yeah, pretty much.
Their speed of light is based off starting with the radius of the globe and the average distance to a heliocentric sun, average over a 12-month period. So how can they know the two-way speed of light when it all starts with a radius that was never measured and a distance to something that is only an average that they don't even know? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's and they have to give this thing that is going a distance to a radius as well, and that's based off of an angular size and a belief. It's all back engineered from angular size. It's total utter nonsense.
Yeah, for sure.
When I first heard about the double slit, right? When I first heard about this, was way before I ever got into flat Earth. This is going back, I don't know how long ago. And I saw a video, or I saw it on TV, I think it was, and many years ago. And they said that what was so interesting about it was that it appears that the light moves instantaneously. That's what they said.
Yeah.
And I've heard QE many times. I've heard him say many times that quantum mechanics debunks Einstein because it debunks his speed of light claim, because light moves instantaneously.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So then they say, well, now they're walking that back because I hit them with the logic there, Brian, which is, well, if light's a physical particle, if it's a photon, how could it be instant? How could it be instant? You know, how can something travel instantly if it's a physical particle? And like, it can't, bro. And like, it's okay. It's no big deal, but they were wrong. But it's okay even if they want to disagree, right? But we should just move on beyond it. So I do respect it. Got heated for a little bit, bro, but I think we had a decently cordial conversation. It's been like 2.5 hours, so I don't want to go too long.
Yeah, it's gone on a bit. Well, all I'd say about it is that it seems that the same effect is being observed, and people are coming to different opinions of what causes it. So I would love to know what just for the end, I would love to know what the origin of the magnetism is. What creates magnetism and electricity? How does it turn up? What does it do? Is it just a part of a cycle? I believe it is, but that's a belief.
Well, I actually don't disagree. I think it's part of a cycle, as in, well, there's two different primary parts to a magnetic field. It's the magnetic field itself, which we see as like spatial extension, what we call the magnetic field, like I can move something over there with it. And then you have the inside of it. If you look at it in a Ferrell cell, you'll see the black void portion, right? So that's the dielectricity. So you have centrifugal divergence, and then you have the opposite of that, which is convergence, right? Centripetal convergence. So centripetal convergence goes through the middle effectively. Then you have the opposite. So anyway, there's two different things going on, and it looks like it comes from the ether's pure state, and then magnetism is when the ether moves, because it's a cycle. And it's always trying to get back to that pure potential state where it's just resting there. We can call it the ether, call it what you want. There's like a pure potential state where it rests. Magnetism when it's in motion. And everything is trying to get back to its pure potential state. That's why things lose charge over time and stuff like that. And so that's basically the explanation. Electricity would just be those two components, the dielectric and the magnetic, coherent together, like as a singular unit. And that's where you get electricity. Light would be the dielectric oscillating field with the magnetic oscillating field, and they intersect, and where they intersect, they call that a photon, but it's an event, not a thing. And that's why you always have electromagnetic radiation with light. So there's a few things, and like I said, I don't know all things, Brian. I'm trying to figure it out too. I just think I have a significantly more logically viable framework, but than the mainstream, than quantum mechanics, but to each their own. A single photon doesn't go through two slits at the same time. Just saying it's just math doesn't answer the question, and because it still has that pattern pop up. So why? And we have a bunch of questions like, why does it disappear when we observe it? But in the ether, it makes perfect sense, because you don't just look at it. You use an electronic plate to disturb the ether, because you're using a plate with electrons, which is just electrostatic. So it's like rippling in the water of the wave. So anyway, it's not, and I want to clarify this too. Basically, the false dichotomy of particle or wave has been propagated for weeks now, where we're not claiming light is a wave, because a wave isn't a thing. Like light is not a wave. What if light can be classified, like we mathematically described its movement as a wave-like? So we call it a wave function or whatever, but it's whatever's there just shaking or vibrating or oscillating at different rates. And so it can look like it's waving. Sometimes it looks much more longitudinal, like straight, based on the coherency of whatever disturbs the ether that gives you light. So it's not a wave that physically travels. Just like a wave isn't a thing going through the water, it's just the water moving. It's important to understand that distinction, because in that understanding, light's just already there. Waves aren't things. It's just movement of what's already there. There's all kinds of different types of ways that the background moves, and that's the understanding. And then the critique is, well, to understand light that way, you have to assume the ether. Well, to understand light as a physical photon, you have to assume the photon. You have to assume a quantum of information, a physical particle. And it doesn't work. We have all kinds of observations that debunk it. And it's needed for relativity and gravity and Einstein. So like, That's kind of a good little wrap up. If you want a closing statement, then you can go ahead, bro. Just I
Yeah,
won't
well,
interrupt you.
yeah, my closing statement would be that I think that it would be beneficial for you to, because what you've explained tonight is what I thought you were trying to get at, but I wasn't sure, right? And I think it would be beneficial for you, I say you especially because you really are probably the forerunner within the community with this, even though it's talked about on Globebusters and that you were already investigating it or had an interest in it before Globebusters, yes?
Mhm.
Yeah, prior to that. So what I would say is that the word ether is a trigger word because it has been used in different contexts, all around the same thing, but being given different descriptions so many times throughout history, starting off with it being the breath of God, I think it was originally described, something like that. So I think maybe that word is a bad word because there's too many other, let's just say, there's too many other things that come to mind for people when they hear that. So when you say ether or the ether, people could think about Einstein, they could think about Tesla, they could think about Ken Wheeler, they could think about all kinds of different versions of what the ether is and how it works. And so consequently, when you use that word, it is a trigger word, I think, with people. But I think more the explanation, right, of what you're trying to explain. I understand what you're trying to explain is that what you're basically, it's always what we describe as light is always here. It's just a case of exciting it or invoking it in different ways. Right? Is that a fair description of what you're claiming? Do you want me to say it again?
Yeah, say it one more time so far I answer that.
Yeah. Of what you're describing, right, is something that is always there, but we invoke it or excite it in different ways.
Yeah.
And we get to view it in different ways. And that's what we call light.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think maybe your investigation is more like, I think the word ether is a bad word because it has so many connotations connected to it.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I tried to what I did was a little like demonstration. I did a little test, a litmus test. I ran around saying background medium instead, and that didn't work either. People still got triggered, and we'll define medium. Medium is defined as material or substance, and it's like, well, acts as a medium. So then I changed it to background that acts as a medium. And there's really no, to be honest, Brian, if we're gonna be fair, there's really no winning. But it's all good.
If I was in your position, I would just state exactly what it is that I mean. Which is that light, what we describe as light, is something that seems to always be there, and we invoke it in different ways.
I think it's tied to magnetism too, right? Like magnetism and electrostatics and so it gets tricky. I mean,
yeah, I understand that, but if you're just talking about just purely light itself, just that one explanation, you can word it your own way, but as long as people understand it, then you are putting forward a colloquial theory that people can go, that does make sense. Because we can't prove everything with science, but sometimes it's just what makes sense. Sometimes is what people need to hear. So I think what you're trying to say has some sense. What you're trying to say has some sense to it, and I couldn't say you're wrong. I don't have no idea what light is, but the word ether is a bad word because it invokes things. There's too many other descriptions connected to it. And I do agree in 2022, the fact that we have no idea what creates magnetism and electricity is pretty bad. Crazy. I have thought about that. I mean, I'm sure everyone, I don't know if there's anyone in the world didn't ever go to themselves, where does this stuff come from? Electricity, magnetism. How does that work? We've all had magnets as children, and we're like trying to push them together, and they're pushing away from each other, or trying to hold them apart, and they're pulling together. Like, and we've all had that wonder, but we are no further forward than that point where the magnets are pulling together or pushing apart. We're still at that point.
Seemingly, yeah. I think it's because of relativity, man, and heliocentrism, but that's my opinion. Well, thank you for coming on, man. I know it got heated at one point, and I mean, technically, it looks like we could talk for 7 hours, but I do appreciate you coming on, And again, I said I'm sorry if it got heated at one point. I tried to keep it cordial. It happens. It's just kind of spirited exchange, but I think we covered a decent amount of stuff. And yeah, I hope you feel like you were able to say your position. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on. It shows I got respect for that. I kind of knew when I extended the debate that you may be the one that would reach out to me and be willing to come on. And so salute for that. Salute for willing to come and like hear out the other argument and be willing to stand toe to toe. And I think that's a good thing. That's what's always needed. So if you want to say anything to the people or one more anything, and then I guess I'll just I'll take you out of the call and then chat with
Yeah,
them for a
I'm
second.
not
and
negative to say. Yeah, thanks for having me in. I enjoyed it. I know things ought to be heated, but the problem is we debate. So we having a conversation is hard when you're used to only debating. Because debating is not conversating. It's my point beating your point. And that's what
Right.
it becomes. So that's why that happened. But the start and at the end, grand, nice and cordial. Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. I don't know if I furthered the investigation into light, but it was what it was. And yeah, I know you were not worried and you're not scared to go into places. You came into Nathan's. A lot of people won't go into Nathan's and face what goes on there. I understand that. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to extend the offer, because what often happens is that people won't go into Nathan's because of the way that because it's so not territorial, it's so aggressive that sometimes you don't get your point. The point you're trying to make is not heard because of that, because everything is so specific and so tight and rigid. And I understand why it has to be that way, because we do not want to go back to what we just got out of. And that's what that's about. But it doesn't fit everybody. And if you're trying to philosophize or trying to figure something out, then you're going like that's. I understand why you had to go in there eventually because of all the other people making claims, and I respect that you went in there under those conditions, and that it's not easy just turn up in Nathan's for anyone. But our position is that rigidity is important. But I understand I understand your critiques of some of the things that people would see as us claiming is science on Nathan's when you are saying no, they're not. Because how can they be? Because of this, that, and everything. I understand that.
Yep.
So,
cool.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks for coming on, man. I'll talk to you later. All right, later. Whew. That was a little longer than I planned, but that was cool. We had it cordial at the end, so that's what's up. What's his name? Nil said, "Wait till you see what's coming." Yeah. Is what's coming going to explain how a physical photon can be instant, or how you don't have to reify the electron to prove the photon, or how it is that you somehow knew a physical BP hit a photoelectric plate when actually all it is the reification of an electron being hit and dislodged from an atom with a physical photon, and then a photon turning into a photoelectron and creating a dot? Can anyone explain that to me? How do you get a interference pattern from single photon shot 1-on-1? Can you prove how you shot a single photon? Can you verify that? Okay. Literally just those questions in it. What's outside the material world? Something or nothing. Thank you guys for kicking it. Very well done. Thank you, man. Hopefully some of the points got out good enough. It is what it is. I thought that would be a good way to kind of do it. At least have him come in, try to give their position and let him fully talk. I know at times it kind of got to where it was interrupty, which is not a word, but interruptive. But hopefully that wasn't too bad to listen to. And like I said, I tried to let him fully talk, and it happens. Some people, sometimes you get heated. But anyway, shout out to Brian for at least coming and having the conversation, right? It's really easy to sit in an echo chamber, and then when someone comes and talks to you, you fundy mute them, 10v1 them, straw man them, falsely tout victory. So shout out to him for that. And yeah, it's just like, you're saying I have to verify the claim that there's no light there when it's dark. Oh, you're so stupid. And then mute me 5 times. And then when I finally get to say the sentence, which was there's a non-visible spectrum of light, everyone gets quiet, no rebuttal, nothing to say. And then they just change the subject. They still haven't said anything. They still can't rebut it. They still can't answer any of my questions. No one will ever answer any of my questions. And that's whatever. That's the most attention that I'm giving that direction. Just so you know. I just wanted to go ahead and kind of get it out of the way. He reached out to me. I thought it wouldn't be a terrible idea. Thank you for the $10 super chat, Colin. Much appreciated, brother. He says thank you, man. Answered them all. See, watch. Neil said answered them all. Now watch this. As I ask him, he won't actually answer any of the questions. Okay, watch. Do you have to prove the electron to be able to claim that the photon hits the plate? He won't answer. Awesome chat. What's it? Thank you, man. Great show, Austin. Thank you, brother. Much love. FED full of crybabies. Obviously, like look at him. Maybe listen to the show tomorrow again. See what I'm saying? Like they can't. You have to claim the electron is hit by a photon and then creates a dot pattern on the plate. But I'm not getting trapped into it because I happen to know for a fact he doesn't understand any of it. He doesn't understand any of it. Just wants to chant and use ad homs and all that nonsense. So, great debate. Glad it wasn't toxic. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean, yeah. So yeah, it's pretty funny. You are a foolish little boy. See what I call it an ad hom. You don't have to. Everyone leave it like it's cool. Just let them go. I think it's good for everyone to see how they literally can't respond to the actual argument. It's so funny. So, can a single photon be instant? Do you need the electron to claim that the photon hits the plate? Because let me teach you something, Nil. They claim that little dot pattern that you guys run around saying proves stuff. Do not ever go back on FED. I promise I will never be back on there. 100%. Oh, you don't have to block him, man. That's what I was trying to say. You don't have to block him. Unblock him. Yeah, we don't have to block him. Who cares? You should have nil on us. No. All right. Anyway, Red for Bear, good civil debate. Thank you very much. So we're pushing 3 hours here soon. I'll kind of wrap some of it up, but I think that this is the point, right? What they're going to do is they're going to create a narrative that somehow they're winning, and what they do is they go over there in the echo chamber with 30 people watching, and they say, "Oh yeah, he doesn't get it," and they straw man a bunch of stuff. Dude, just let them have it. Let them have it, because the truth is, they can't respond to the actual arguments when put to what you'll see what happens every time that they get put on the spot. What they do is, I'm not making any claims. Yeah, you are. You claim light's a photon, which means you're claiming that it's an electron that gets hit by a photon on the plate to give you the dot. They don't know that. They hear Oakley say that it's a camera that takes a picture of it, and they don't even understand it. So they just, when you hit them with the actual information and the implicit implications of what it is that they're claiming, they don't know what to do, bro. And so, I mean, it's kind of like a glober, right? Like, treat them like a glober. Ironically, calls us a glober, but they're making pseudoscientific claims about light being a physical particle traveling from point A to point B, just like special relativity attributed to constant speed to light. That's literally what they're doing. The very definition of the quanta packet of information that they're using comes from Einstein. That's Einstein's definition of light, literally. Literally. Look up quantum definition of light. Who proposed the quantum definition of light? Look it up in Google. See what it says. Thank you for the $10 super chat, Mike. 808, much appreciated. Thank you for the support, brother. Great to see you debate again, Austin. So nice. Thank you. We're gonna debate. Karen B and I are debating tomorrow on Modern Day Debate. But what I found is that these people they can't answer the direct questions. So then they all say, I'm not making that claim. I'm not making a claim. I'm not. Yeah, you are. You're claiming light's a physical particle, which means you're claiming that it's physically traveling through the slit, physically impacting the plate, which means you're claiming that it's physically hitting an electron. Because we know that there's an electronic interaction. It's an electrostatic interaction, right? So, and even within quantum mechanics itself, and when people say, like, wait for what's coming, it won't be an actual rebuttal to my presentation, right? So it's like, who cares? I'd much rather just rise up. Like, who cares? You can't rebut my presentation. I cited quantum mechanics fatherheads for you, where they tell you that the dot pattern does not in any way prove the photon is real, and even the photoelectric effect doesn't prove the photon's real, because of it could be an interaction with the electrostatic fields. So that's quantum mechanics textbooks explaining it. You wouldn't invoke the photoelectric effect. It's like such a joke. And then guess what? Einstein got his Nobel Prize for the photoelectric effect. Guess again who defined the quantum definition for light? Einstein. Guess what they need? Surface reading for. See, right? But that's all you have is ad homs and like non sequitur chanting. No, what it says is that it doesn't prove the photon. It could be an electron dot pattern from the electron field, which is an electrostatic field. In fact, electron is nothing more than the terminal end of dielectric induction, a Gaussian dielectric field. You'll say word salad because this is the truth. What you do is you realize some people are not actually worthy of conversation and they don't understand it. And this is really one of the last times I'll be giving any direction, anything in that direction, any type of energy. Like I said, I do appreciate Brian for coming on, having a pretty cordial conversation, and kind of got a little bit not too cordial for a second, but yeah, hopefully you guys kind of saw some of the issues with the counter. Why not just give attributes of ether to light? Well, yeah, I mean, good question though, you know. They're claiming the light's a physical photon that travels from point A to point B because they have to claim that. Like, say, give me my free energy and I'm with you, Ken. I mean, Austin. You see what I'm saying? Like, just really childish. Like these are grown men, but they're really childish. But like, the funny part is, it's not Ken. I disagree with Ken on tons of things. It's like, it's just the father has electrical field theory and it's common sense, and you can see that it's the only logically viable thing. So I just use my actual intellect and wisdom and discernment to realize that quantum mechanics definition of physical particles doesn't work. They can't even define electrostatics. They can't define magnetism. They can't define electricity. They invoke something called a virtual photon, which is just mathematical constructs to make their equations work, because it doesn't work, because there's too much energy for their quantum claim of everything being comprised of physical particles when there are no particles there. It can't explain anything. It can't explain why a single photon ends up creating a wave interference pattern. It can't explain why detecting it makes it go away. It can't explain why when you use a crystal and then split your reified single photon that you can't verify you ever shot a single one or verify that it even exists in the first place, and then you just reify that you split it, that once you do that somehow the photon can go back and alter events that have already happened because it's detected after it hits the plate, but somehow it still doesn't have an interference pattern. And they won't ever address any of the nonsense that comes with their claim. It's like you talking to a globe, like, well, if the Earth was actually doing what you say, it would be doing this and this and this and this and this and this. It's the same thing that they're doing with the photon. But now then, whenever you put them on the spot, you know what they say? I'm not making any claims. Oh, actually, the photon is just a description. Oh, I'm not making any claims. Oh, you know, that's all they do. So it's like, it's hilarious. And so when I ask, how does a single photon go through two slits simultaneously and collide with itself? It's hyperbole elucidating the nonsense that you think you shoot single photons. Just like when I said, how does a single photon give you a wave interference pattern? I don't mean it literally. I mean, how are you shooting single photons at a time and then getting a wave interference pattern, right? It's so simple. It's like some of them claim superposition, meaning that they mathematically work out how the photon could be in both of those places at the same time because they don't know which one it's in. And so it just randomly happens to work out like a wave every time. Single photons randomly shot just happen to work out like a wave. We can't physically prove it. We can't verify the speed of light. So could light be a physical particle and not travel? Could light be a physical particle and be instant? It's just so funny. And by the way, I have the person that they're all waiting on to come save them with their arguments. That's why they can't rebut my thing. They're all just waiting for their arguments to be hand delivered to them. See, look what Neil's saying. And Nathan answered you. Nathan didn't answer, how does single photons at a time result in an interference pattern? He just said it doesn't. No, I'm asking, you misunderstood the question. You're shooting single photons at once. So yeah, one single photon wouldn't. I'm asking you, if you keep shooting single photons at a time, which is all just begging the question, reification fallacy that you cannot prove. You guys are pseudoscientist morons. Literally, you guys are pseudoscientists. I ask, can you prove you shot a single photon? You can't. Can you prove the photon? You can't. But anyway, if you reify those things and you shoot them through these slits, can you tell me how you get an interference pattern with a singular photon shot at a time? No answer. You'll never get an answer because they don't know. What they say is the wave interference pattern is just math. Okay, but the math is based on where it's landing and how it looks like a wave interference pattern. So how do you get the interference pattern? No answer. They'll never get any answer. Right? And then just Fundy mute me, straw man me. And then he says, I said, lights everywhere. They call me stupid. I said, he turned the light on. I'm like, you know that there's light there before you turn the light on. Call me stupid. And then I said, what about the non-visible spectrum of light? No answer. And then he says, oh, wave function collapse. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's mathematical, right? Okay, now you're saying that because you observe it, the wave function goes away. Can you explain how that happens? No. The truth is that it's never a particle nor a wave. That's a false dichotomy. And waves aren't things or types of movement, which means there has to be a background medium already there that's moving. It's not traveling anywhere because waves aren't things. And yeah, we mathematically describe the movement with the wave function, but for it to be moving like that, any type of movement based on where it's allegedly landing, where it can be detected, it's oscillation. You have an oscillating magnetic and oscillating dielectric field where they intersect. They call that the photon, but it's not a thing. It's just an event. And they can't respond to any of it. They'll say, I'm talking too fast. They'll call it word salad. So it's just time to elevate past the very remedial, like stupid arguments. I don't even think it deserves our thing. This is the thing. They'll drag this out forever because they want clicks and they want drama. They want attention. I don't care. They'll never rebut my presentation. So this is kind of the last time I'm really talking about it. I've been talking on and off and inadvertently and whatever. We had Brian on. That was cool. I'm not just going around touting victory after I talk to Brian. I think that the audience can make their own decision. If they think Brian made, if they like the points that Brian made, they can side with him. I don't care, right? And that's the point. It's been rebutted. It literally hasn't. It literally hasn't, Neil. That's why you can't say it right now. Here's my question, Neil. Can a single photon travel instantaneously? What's it? Can you do a quantum eraser experiment one day? I'm about to do the double slit, so I may try to make a quantum eraser one. See, you can't answer. What is ether? It's the non-manifest pure potential energy. It's non-manifest pure potential energy. It's an energetic background that acts as a medium that sustains electromagnetic energy. It's non-manifest pure potential of that energy that manifests within the material world once put into motion. Word salad. Double speak. See what I'm saying? This dude's so funny. I want to show it because I want everyone to be able to come read the chat. See, I want everyone to be able to come read the chat and be able to read how ridiculous that site is so they can just move on. But I think we should maybe move on. Finally, someone said it. So many issues within this community. Yeah. To what kind of abuse to intentionally choose to be there? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Sorry, Austin. It's all good. I think it's cool for everyone to see it. I think everyone needs to see it. But like I said, we're elevating above it. Like I said, there's a lot of people in this community that honestly just need to be left behind, bro. Like that's how I honestly feel. They're intellectual stagnant. They're confined. They're not actually even capable of understanding the implications of their own claims. They just want to go sit in their echo chamber and baselessly claim victory and chant, even though they're not actually responding to anything that I say. Right. And so I was like, how do you get an interference pattern from single photon shot at once? Can you prove that you shot a single photon? How did you prove you shot a single photon? Whenever you claim the photon is creating a dot pattern on the screen, can you please explain to me how you prove the electron? Do you need the electron to claim that you have a photon hitting the plate? Can you prove it physically travels from point A to point B? Can you prove it has a speed? If it doesn't have a speed and can be instant, can a physical photon be instant? Can a single photon go through both slits simultaneously? No, it can't, but that's how you have to work out your math. Oh, well, it's just math. Okay, so you're saying that the photon is sentient and is deciding consistently a million times in a row to land perfectly one at a time to make it look like an interference pattern. That's what you're claiming. But they don't know any of this. Thank you for the $2 super chat. I think it's $2. It looks like some other type of English Dragon Organics. Thank you for the support. So anyway, that's what I'm saying. I think it's like, it's stupid. Like I said, this sums it all up. If Nikola Tesla jumped on the show and he was like, I'm working on a new theory, a new dynamic theory of gravity where everything seeks this electrostatic equilibrium and the luminescence ether, they would bombard him and say, oh, gas goes down. And they would just like trash him and call him names and insult him and not let him talk. It's Nikola Tesla, bro. The only reason you have a computer or a phone or any type of electricity. So just who cares? It's like Tesla wouldn't keep going and talking about him. I've like messed up by even giving him as much attention as I have. I'm moving on. We're elevating above it. They can't answer any of my basic questions. But just to any of you guys that run into any of these people or anything like that, just know that you can literally ask them basic questions. Just the way you speak proves you have no idea. Self-projection of the person who literally doesn't understand any. He like literally is incapable, physically incapable of understanding any of the conversation. That's why he can't answer any questions at all. And he just self-projects with ad homs. That's why I'm going to probably ignore him from now on. So anyway, you guys, all you have to do is ask some questions like that. Like, ask them, how do you prove that you shot a single photon at a time? Then ask them, hey, what happens on the photographic plate to give you the dot? And then they're going to say it hits the photon. It hits the plate. Like, oh, so you're saying it travels and hits it? Well, no, I just used the word hit. Well, then what do you mean other than hit? Impact. Okay, so it travels and hits it or impacts it. So you're claiming it travels. Can you prove that it travels? They'll just want to say, I'm not claiming it travels. You're claiming a physical particle of light hits the plate. Oh, I'm not making any claims. It's so easy to just destroy them and then ask them, okay, so if there's a physical particle hitting the plate and that's what gives us a dot, did you know that it's actually claimed that it has an interaction with an electron, and that's what gives the actual electron turning into a photoelectron is what gives you the actual dot? Did you know that? And then ask them if they can prove the electron. They can't even claim a physical particle, a quanta of information, a discrete chunk. They can't claim any of that without making a claim about an electron, because that's how you get the dot pattern. But they're so far lost. They think you take a picture of the photon and it gives you a dot. Like they're not even in the world, like even remotely close to the realm of having any type of understanding about what they're talking about. It's so bad. How do you prove your concept of either has effect on tangible objects? Yeah, this is a philosophical discussion. So it's like you can prove things by way of logical axiom. There's no other logically viable explanation for electrostatics, electricity, or magnetism. So it's just the most logically viable thing that we have right now. So I would say that it's quote unquote proven by logical axiom that there's something that exists outside the metaphysical world, provably 100%. That's by logic. Just like we know that we can prove a creator without physically manipulating the creator, because the necessary antecedent to creation is a creator, and necessary antecedent to design is a designer, intelligent design. That's how we know that we have a creator. The way that we know that we have a consciousness, or that another way that we know the metaphysical world interacts with the material world is we have a consciousness. We experience that in the physical world. It's not just physical, right? But either way, like the creator is a perfect example. So there's an interaction with the metaphysical and the material. The question is, what exists outside the material world? Is it something or nothing? If there's something out there, then okay, now you exist. Now you agree there's a metaphysical realm. Okay, where does energy come from? If it cannot be created nor destroyed, it can only be transferred or transformed. So the first law of thermodynamics basically supports us. I can't tell if any of this is actual money that people are sending. Mid-debate, pray for Brian to understand you. Thank you, man. Thank you for the support. I don't know what SEK is. So anyway, you said ether is non-manifest. I said that in its pure potential state. Yeah, that's right. And then maybe, if there was a process of it becoming manifest, which is light, electromagnetism, electricity, and that's basically the ether in motion. And when it's at rest, it's non-manifest, pure potential, and everything's trying to get back to that state because everything seeks equilibrium and comes down to pressure mediation. Or we can just say, I don't know a lot. We can just say, I don't know a lot. Can you explain magnetism? No. Shout out to English Dragon Organics for the $1 super chat. I don't know. What's magnetism? I don't know. What's electrostatics? I don't know. What's electricity? I don't know. What is light? I don't know. You don't know anything. So just sit over there and don't try to understand anything. No one cares if that's what you want to do. All right. Thank you guys for kicking it. Show me the ether, you stupid fool. Hey, Neil, can you show me a physical particle called the photon? He won't answer again. It's like a glober. It's worse than a glober. It's literally worse than a glober. Show me the ether, you stupid fool. Now we're all asking them, waiting them in the chat. We're asking, can you show me a photon? Can you show me a physical particle called the photon? Why are you deflecting? Okay, the ether, I'm not deflecting. The ether's immaterial. You cannot see it. There are certain things that you can't see, Neil. Pull your crayons out and write this down, okay? Because I know you're slow. I know that you're slow. So write this down with your crayons, Neil. You can't see everything. That doesn't mean it does not exist. Can you show me a thought? Can you show me intuition? Can you show me dreams? Can you show me the consciousness? Can you show me a creator? No. There are things that exist. This is like Neil would have been the person like 150 years ago when you said, I think there's a more spectrum of light than what we see visibly. He would have called you an idiot and show it to me and bottle it up. You're so stupid. Haha, I'm so smart. I don't know even what light is, but I know you're stupid. I don't know what visible light is, but you're stupid. That's basically what he would say. And then you get an x-ray out and you'd be like, you were wrong. Here's infrared. Here's this and this. That's all there is to it. Just stupid. This is the thing. I'm not responding to any more of his chats. I just wanted him to be in the chat so everyone can see how incredibly ridiculous he looks, right? And then whenever you ask them, like, because they're like, haha, I got him. He can't show the photon. You're so stupid. They call you names and stuff. And you say, can you show me a physical photon? He can't answer. So he says, you're deflecting, because they know they can't. And so basically all it is it gets resorts to ad hom, which is why Oakley, all he did was interrupt me, call me names, a little effing boy over and over, ask me how his balls taste, all this stupid nonsense, right? Because they can't debate me. It's just like a Glober can't debate me. So they resort to sophistry, ad homs, personal attacks, red herrings, straw man fallacies. It's like, whatever, bro. Let them keep going. That's all they do is resort to insults because they can't address if can light be a physical photon and travel from point A to point B instantly. So can light be instant if it's a photon? Are you claiming that light is traveling? If you claim it hits the plate, you have to claim it's traveling. Can you claim the photon without claiming the electron is what causes the interaction that gives you the dot on the plate? Can you explain how you get an organized interference pattern on the plate? It's not just math. There's a pattern on the plate. Can you see how you get that pattern a million times in a row every single time? If the photon is just a single dot, a single particle, that's physical particle that's randomly hitting the plate? Can't answer any of these questions. Can you please prove to me that you shot a single photon? How'd you isolate that? How'd you prove that? So stupid. So basically, anyway, I'm gonna move on. Like, I hate I even interacted with it, but it kind of goes to show, like, it goes to show how the other side just intellectually incompetent and incorrect and inaccurate. Who cares? We're gonna elevate above it. So this was the last time I ever did this. I'm sorry to those of you that kind of got frustrated that I even got into the toxic realm at all anymore. And a lot of you guys are just kind of saying, look, man, their channel's dying for a reason. It's really redundant and monotonous, and just elevate beyond it and keep ladling gravy. And so that's what I'm gonna do from here on. I don't wanna get involved into the drama anymore. I hate it, right? And like that's just how it goes. So some people are gonna always be like this, man. And like, you have to accept people for who they are. Sometimes you can't expect to reason with them. I think it would be foolish to think you're gonna reason with a fool. And I think that's kind of what I've messed up on in some ways, where I'm trying to have very deep, intellectually stimulating, thought-provoking, like really, really deep thought type conversations with people that are not ready for that. So there's no point in doing that. I think you should talk about sexes for 4 hours every day. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Have a great night, sir. Thank you very much. All right, so we hit the 3-hour mark. Thank you guys for kicking it. Hopefully, you enjoyed. I don't think I missed anything. If you want to support the channel, you can go to $. On Cash App. You can go to paypal.me/inaworld for PayPal. You can also go to whatsit@protonmail.com for Zelle and PayPal. That's whatsit@protonmail.com. And we also have a member link, which I don't know if it actually works, but you can become a member on the channel, which would be greatly appreciated. It's a monthly member. There are different tiers, and we'll do like member-only videos released, member-only chats, and stuff like that. And each different level has a different perk. Thank you for the $2. I guess whatever. I don't know what that is, if that's dollars or what that is. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the $2 on Rockfin. See if you said something with it. Video and audio doing well. Sweet. So yeah, you can become a member. I'll drop the link. And you don't have to, obviously. But I just think it would be cool to create some like consistent safety net. You're a rock star, Austin. Thank you, Glowbusters, for the super chat and the kind words, brother. So there's a chat. You can become a member. You'll get a little star. You have a different. They're called miswits. That shout out to Kai for coming up with that. Pretty creative. That's also the name of the Discord. So Kieran B and I will be doing a debate tomorrow night. I will be doing another debate on Vader Bear's channel Saturday night. And yeah, there you go. So it should be cool. Got a lot of content coming. I think that if it's not too long of a debate, then we may do an after show and kick it here after the debate on Modern Day Debate. We'll see how it goes. So there's that. Cool stuff. So it's been like 3 hours. I'm gonna get out of here, but I love you guys. Like I said, any support's greatly appreciated. That's what makes any of this possible. And we're about to release the names of the shows next week, and then there'll be a consistent format. So it should be super dope. I'm still working on the intro videos and stuff like that, and I'm looking through my emails. So just be patient with me. I got a ton of stuff going on, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation. Sorry about any of the toxicity. Like I said, I'm just going to rise above it from this point forward. So let them crash and burn. They did it to themselves. I hope Guy's doing well. Miss flash smacking with her. Yeah, I'll tell her you said hey. She is doing very well. So cool. He won't enter UT. Who's T? Does ether warp? What's it? Warp? I would say that when the ether's put in motion, it physically manifests. So that's like what we call magnetism and electricity and electrostatics. Basically, electrostatics is actually under strain. So when it's at rest, it's back in its original non-manifest state. So there you go. There's that. All right. So thank you guys for kicking it again. Seek and speak truth unequivocally. The weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. So don't care what ignorant people think, right? Like informed people don't care what ignorant people think. Wise people don't care what foolish people think. Smart people don't care what dumb people think. Strong people don't care what weak people think. Usually the weak try to conform to consensus, or they need someone else to think for them because they can't think for themselves, and just kind of accept it, let that be, let them like, you know, like I said, burn in flames or fall where they fall, but like they lay in the bed that they made. And that's kind of how you got to treat life. People are always going to come attack you when they can't think for themselves, or they group think whenever you think outside of the box, or you start to get closer to the truth. Very rarely is the truth popular. Usually it's not, and whoever speaks the truth is not popular. And that's kind of how that works. So whatever's popular is rarely true, and whatever's true is rarely popular. So yeah, just seek and speak truth regardless. And you know, basically the creator of all things, Yah, the creator of this world, you know, he is basically a representation of what truth is. So represent him or truth. And when you represent truth, and when you get reviled for representing truth and representing his name, for his name's sake, rejoice, for they did all the prophets before you. So that just means you're doing something right. And again, if you want to support the Tor, $, I always say Tor intrinsically when I start to do like the thing. But if you want to support the channel, $What'sItGetsIt on Cash App. You can also sign up and become a member on YouTube with a link down below and in the chat. You can also support the channel with PayPal, paypal.me/InAWorld. And you can go to patreon.com/What'sItGetsIt or what'sit@protonmail.com on PayPal or Zelle. So there you go. Thank you guys for kicking it. I'll catch up with you guys later. Debate tomorrow night with Karen B. I think it's 9 p.m. Eastern. Until then, peace.
That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting steady high, steady sipping pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in the field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock and twirl somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force them as simple that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature to mean extorted it. They forging it if news anchors informants who informing them. There's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we courting ships, important gifts, of course it is. But extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks we ignoring, which informing this, informing this. It looked like we were snoring tricks. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting steady high, steady simple pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?